Welcome to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
Should we go? Yeah. All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Coming to you not live from the 10 by 10. Are you coughing? 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science. I promise.
I wasn't prepared for that.
Brothers of the Serpent. This is a cube where we do science. We specialize here in trying it at home.
I thought you were supposed to say triangles.
I can't tell you how many times we have set this cube on fire.
Yeah.
At least once.
At least.
Very calmly, though. It was ablaze.
Yep.
And we have video of the whole thing. Maybe one day we'll release it. Well, maybe we don't have video anymore.
Yep. Completely emptied out my fire extinguisher and had to get a new one. So I went out and robbed the nearest boat that was parked in my property somewhere. Now I have a new one.
So there's no news. Nothing's happening.
Yeah, there's zero things happening. I can't believe this, man. Like, Göbekli Tepe is sitting there and nothing's fucking happening with it.
Yeah.
There's fucking chambers under the Sphinx and nothing's happening there.
And Gudeng Padang has chambers down in it. And nothing's happening
there. As a matter of fact, the people that found those chambers are being poo-pooed on.
Yeah. That's
But
right.
probably not today because nothing has happened this week.
Yeah. Not even that has happened in the news.
They found entire cities in Mexico bigger than Manhattan and just nothing.
No further
Nothing
developments.
else.
Yeah. They found chambers in the pyramid. No further developments.
Yep. No further developments. Everybody's sitting at home with their minds blown.
Not a lot of weird shit happening right now, but well, there is some weird stuff, but it was not this week.
Yeah. There's a lot of weird shit happening next week, though.
Oh yeah, it's a lot. Is the weird forecast?
Just say it.
70% chance of weird shit next week, folks.
That's right. We're expecting great new discoveries next week.
So, I've been looking at the moon because you got to know
Because there's nothing else to do. But that's a great thing to look at.
Well, you got to know what the moon's doing.
Yeah. Yep.
And I found out that it's been doing the same shit for a really long time. But
It's practicing Mr. Miyagi's fucking training shit. Wax on, wane off. Sooner or later, it'll start kicking all of our asses.
That's right. It'll go full moon on us. So, whenever I see people like talking about the moon online or whatever, if I have a chance, I'll say like, you know, there's interesting things about the moon, and I've said this on the podcast before, but the diameter of the moon in miles is 2,160.
What?
Which is really interesting because that's, of course, the number of years in
A processional age.
That's right. And of course, that also makes the radius of the moon 1080.
Wait.
Right? 1080 plus 1080 is 2160.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So
wait a minute. The radius of the moon is 3 circles.
That's right.
It's the
The diameter is 6, of course.
6 circles.
Yeah. The diameter of the sun is 400 times exactly the diameter of the moon, which I should have that number in front of me, but I don't. It's 867,000, I think. Let me do this real quick on my calculator. I have a calculator. Let's see. 821.
I have a calculator.
I have one on my phone. 2160 times 400. 864. Okay, so I was close. 864,000 miles is the diameter of the sun. So the diameter of the moon, 2160. Diameter of the sun, 864,000. That's 400 times exactly. Now, the distance between the Earth and the sun is 93 million miles. The distance between the Earth and the sun, or the Earth and the moon, is, I can't remember this one either, 200 something. But anyway, the difference in the distance between the sun and the moon from the Earth is also 400.
Really?
Yeah. So
Is that why they're the same size?
that's right. The factor is 400 here.
So if I have something that's twice as large as another thing that I have,
And
then I put that larger thing twice as far away as the small thing, then they're going to look the same size.
they'll be the same apparent size to you, yeah.
That seems really absurdly simple. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. So if I have, wait.
Let me get
Because
this.
I was trying to think of like if I have the small thing in my hand and the large thing is somewhere further away, and I put the small thing up in front of it and like move it towards me and away from me with my arm.
Yeah.
Once I get it to where they look the same size, I know that how far the thing that I have in my hand is from me is half the distance.
Right. That the thing that's far away that you're not touching is twice the distance.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so the distance from the Earth to the moon is 232,500 miles, which
So
is...
when I parachute into Egypt, I'm going to have a scale model of the Great Pyramid that I know exactly how small it is compared to
Yeah.
the Great Pyramid. And when I'm hiking towards the Great Pyramid, I'll keep holding it up
Yeah.
until it looks the same size, and I'll be like, I'm 400.
Yeah, whatever the ratio is, yeah. I'm exactly 10 miles away.
Then I have to bust out another one that's like a little bit bigger. So I know
Or just make it get closer to you.
Yeah, that's true. I'm totally fucking doing that.
Yeah. So if you had a model of a pyramid and you knew exactly how big it was, then exactly how big it was. And as you were walking towards the Great Pyramid, you could hold it out and figure out exactly how far away you were by
multiplying.
Yeah.
Multiplying the size times the distance of the small model to my face.
That's right.
Fuck yeah.
So that incredible thing, the common factor is 400 between the sun and the moon. That's what makes them be the same apparent size of the sky, which also makes it so that we can, when we have a solar eclipse, the moon perfectly occults the sun, which allows us to see the corona, which is the solar atmosphere, which would not happen in any, if the moon was a little bit bigger or a little smaller or a little closer or farther away, this wouldn't work. And there's no other orbiting moon body or whatever, moon object in the solar system that also has this same property from the apparent surface of its planet. Now, most of the moons obviously are on gas giants, but they're so small. So anyway, that's the first thing I tell people. Like, this is always fascinating to me that this precision relative to the surface of Earth is infinitesimally like probable. It's improbable to the extreme. Like this does not seem like it can be an accident. But I found out recently that there's a whole lot of other. Now I've known about some other like lunar anomalies before. Like the Blair cuspids are very strange. They were found by one of NASA's orbiting cameras in the 60s, probably. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, their pictures were taken of the lunar surface. So the camera, like Google Earth, you're looking straight down, and you can go, now you can take Google Earth and make it Google Moon and look down at all the pictures they've got on the moon. But the Blair cuspids are these artifacts or objects that were pictured on the moon's surface. They're little white, very small, like narrow white objects. They look like they could be rocks or whatever, but the shadows they're casting are too long for them to be like boulders. They're more like towers. Okay.
Yeah, I remember you showing me those.
Yeah, they're called the Blair cuspids. So but when you look at the photograph initially, you're like, you don't get that. You see they have these short shadows coming off of them or whatever, and you're like, what's the big deal? But then you realize that it was almost high noon at, like lunar high noon, where the sun was almost going straight down on them, and they still have these like kind of long shadows for that, right? One of them is estimated at being 70 meters tall, which is way too...
Wow.
For the narrowness of the object. It's basically like, it looks like the shadow that would be cast by something like the Washington Monument. If you're looking straight down at the Washington Monument, you see this little bitty square, but then it has this enormous shadow coming off of it, right? Which tells you like that it's extremely tall and narrow. So there's no geological explanation for the Blair cuspids. And then the other thing that's interesting
Can you
about
see
them,
those on Google Moon?
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can look them up, I think, and it'll take you right to them, and they tell you that they're not artificial.
That's cool. Sort of.
Yeah. You're going to get a whole bunch of explanations that this is totally natural, and we all understand exactly what they are, but they don't. The other thing that's interesting about the Blair cuspids is there's a perfectly rectangular shape in the ground next to them. And this is the kind of thing, like, if you're looking at an archaeological site, you see like in Egypt, you can do this all over the place in the desert. You cruise through and you'll just see this faint square in the sand, right? And anybody who knows anything about Egypt is going to be like, there's a structure down there, or the foundation of it, or whatever. It's hidden underneath the sand.
Yeah.
You can still see the square. That's exactly what it looks like next to, like,
But if it's
amongst
on the moon, it's natural.
right.
Yeah.
It's completely natural.
Because humans 100,000 years ago wouldn't have tried to leave Earth if there was a massive catastrophe coming.
Right.
And they definitely wouldn't go to the moon if they did leave Earth.
Like, what were they going to do? Flap their butt flaps and fly up there? Butt flappers.
Sir, we've just invented a new butt flap rocket.
I was thinking about the thing we were talking about. I think it was in episode 12.
It's got a lunar flapper.
We were talking about in episode 12. I think it was episode 12 where we were talking about how there's a tendency to...
How you can hear light and see sound.
Oh, maybe it wasn't episode 12. That was episode 12?
Yeah, but we talked about a bunch of other shit.
Yeah. No, it was the one where we were talking about the maps.
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, we talked about how there's a tendency to, like, so if we see that some ancient people did something, we assume the most primitive way that they could have done it, right? Like, the assumption of butt flap is basically what it is.
Right.
Like, what would be the most primitive way you could go to the moon?
Right. Giant catapults.
There was a Chinese guy, because the Chinese invented gunpowder and rockets, right? They're the ones that invented, but they used them for toys for the most part. They made fireworks and shit like that, and little spinners and shit like that out of the gunpowder. But they invented rockets by way of fireworks. So and there was a Chinese guy that actually made a shitload of those and kind of strapped himself to them and fucking had his assistants light him off, and there was a shitload of smoke and a loud noise, and he was never found.
Yeah, I believe that.
Disappeared. Probably he exploded, but
I tried something similar to that when I was a kid, but I didn't strap him to myself, but I did almost die. So I'm sure.
What did you do?
I just took a bunch of bottle rockets and just freaking
taped them together,
fuses, and taped them all together, and taped all their fuses together and lit it.
And then almost died.
And then almost died, yeah. Because the fuses don't all burn the same. And
right.
It was like, you're like, yeah, I've got...
Oh, so did it chase you around the room?
I've got 10 two
Okay, so the Blair cuspids, there's also a tower and monolith. There's a bunch of other stuff on the moon. But I have this list because I recently found out that there are... When they brought back materials from the moon from the Apollo missions, they found what we would consider to be non-natural, alloys, constructed metal materials, like brass. Uranium-236, which is not found naturally. It comes from a breeder reactor, Another one is Neptunium. I don't know how to say it. Neptunium. Anyway,
Neptunium.
so they found this this stuff abundant in the lunar dust, like in the Maria or whatever they call it. The other interesting thing is they found out that the rocks that are on the surface of the moon are made up of completely different stuff than the dust they're sitting on. So the dust on the moon is not like rocks turning into dust, right? The basic idea, if you're on Earth, you see like sand or you see like like sand and silicates or whatever, and then you have these rocks around there, and the assumption is that the sand is a breakdown of the rocks, right? Like in the desert. Well, on the moon, that's not the case. The rocks came from, or the dust came from somewhere else. They're completely different materials. So I have this list. So, okay, and it's basically a list of mysterious things about the moon. Number one, the moon's age. The moon is far older than previously expected, maybe even older than the Earth or the sun.
Okay, that works out with Sumerian text.
The oldest age for the Earth is estimated to be 4.6 billion years. Moon rocks were dated at 5.3 billion years, and the dust upon which they were resting was at least another billion years older than that. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Neptunium.
There it is. Neptunium, chemical element with symbol MP.
It's a chemical element with symbol no problem at atomic number 93.
And it's atomic number 93. Sun is 93 million miles away. Huh. A radioactive something, metal. What is that word? I can't see it.
Actinide?
Actinide. Actinide metal. Neptunium is the first transuranic element.
Transuranic?
I don't know. Transuranic. So it has something to do with Uranus?
That's what I was... it was created artificially in nuclear experiments. Huh.
Yeah.
After uranium.
After uranium. Okay.
Okay.
So uranium-236 is the same way. It's transuranic. Trans. Let's see. Okay, so the rock's origin.
Did they really name uranium after Uranus? Neptunium, named for Neptune?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I did not know that.
So the origin of the rocks, chemical composition of the dust upon which the rocks sat on the moon, differed remarkably from the rocks themselves, like I just said, contrary to accepted theories that the dust resulted from weathering and breakup of the rock. What are they going to weather from?
Plutonium.
The rain on the
I just
moon?
like the way it sounds. Plutonium.
How's your plutonium? Good.
I never realized that they named these things after the planets. Okay, I'm really dumb. Jupiterium. Marsium.
Saturnium. Okay. Heavier elements on the surface. So normal planetary composition results in heavier elements in the core and lighter materials at the surface.
Mercurium.
Mercurium. Wait. Yeah. Mercury. Wait. Not so with the moon. Not so with the moon. According to Wilson, the abundance of refractory elements like titanium in the surface. So they found tons of titanium in the.
And that's after Titan. God. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just learning. I'm just realizing now.
Can you focus here?
All of these. Yeah, I know. All of these freaking things are named after gods and planets are named after gods, and it's all gods.
Yep. So the abundance of refractory elements like titanium in the surface areas is so pronounced that several geologists proposed the refractory compounds were brought to the moon's surface in great quantity in some unknown way. They don't know how, but that it was done cannot be questioned. Okay.
Wow.
So number 4, water vapor. On March 7th, 1971, lunar instruments placed by the astronauts recorded a vapor cloud of water passing across the surface of the moon. The cloud lasted 14 hours and covered an area of about 100 square miles.
That seems plausible. I mean, it's been hit by comets.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's what I was asking when they were talking about the rocks weathering down into the dust. I'm like, what are they getting weathered by? What weather on the moon? Well, there's apparently clouds of water. So 5, magnetic rocks. The moon's rocks were magnetized. This is odd because there is no magnetic field on the moon itself. This could not have originated from a close encounter with Earth because such an encounter would have ripped the moon apart. So why are the rocks magnetic when it doesn't have a magnetic field?
I know. So Earth gets impacted by, some metallic
Yeah.
asteroid. It's like massive one.
Okay.
Extinction level event type
Yeah.
of deal. It explodes, and pieces of the explosion go back out into space and land on the moon.
Yeah.
And so
But they were saying that every fucking rock was magnetized, not just that they found some magnets.
yeah.
Like they're all magnetized.
Well, isn't like everything like magnetic down on the atomic level anyway?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
I mean, magnetism is the reason why we're not all falling through everything. I mean, it's sort of the
Yeah, so I mean, like, you're right about that. I think that whatever it was, they noticed some kind of magnetic property about it that is weird.
too macro to be.
Yeah, like it's weird given that there is no magnetic field of the moon.
Okay.
Like it kind of implies what you said, that the rocks came from a magnetized body.
Yeah.
And since we already know that the dust on the moon is much older than the rocks themselves and is made of completely different shit, then the rocks being magnetized kind of makes sense if it's debris from Tiamat.
From basically what the Sumerians were saying. It was.
Right.
Gotcha.
But they were totally wrong, and so was Sitchin.
Right.
I'm gonna make a website
.com.
called SumeriansWereWrong.com. Yeah.
Okay. Real quick.
Yeah.
Something I learned that, and this could be wrong because you can't really trust Joe Rogan, but no, I'm just kidding. But he actually was like, I'm not real clear on all this, but he was talking about Sitchin, saying, okay, what was it? Damn it. That the Sumerian texts were saying that the Anunnaki came here looking for gold to fix their atmosphere.
Yeah.
Well, that was before the science that showed that like you could actually use gold dust or something in an atmosphere to restore things like ozone and the protective layers that.
Yeah, that's right.
So he's like, I don't know. It's really interesting. Like he's deciphering or having, kind of making his own sort of translations to these texts.
Sitchin, not Joe
Sitchin
Rogan.
is.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, yeah. He comes up with this idea that later was proven to be a viable way to fix an atmosphere.
Sitchin and Velikovsky were a lot alike in that respect, that they both were like basically putting out all this work that made these claims. Sitchin was doing it basically not making claims, but saying, here's what these translated texts say. And Velikovsky was saying, here's what all these myths appear to be saying, right? And they were heavily ridiculed, but over time they were found to be right again and again and again and again about
weird things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But Velikovsky, kind of like Sitchin, they both sort of, they had other ideas or certain things in there that made it really easy for the academic community to just like shit all over them.
Yeah, to totally just
like John Anthony West said that there was some of the stuff that he wrote about Egypt that is just so totally wrong.
Oh yeah, that Sitchin wrote about Egypt. Yeah.
And so John Anthony West never even read his books because he was just like, well, he'd heard what other people were saying about Sitchin.
Yeah.
And then he also had read some of the excerpts about Egypt, and he was just like, yeah, no, this is bullshit.
Yeah, and that's too bad.
That's
because
sad.
Yeah, because like they're both Velikovsky and Sitchin were pioneers in something, and like you can't expect them to get everything right.
And I think in the podcast I was listening to with Joe Rogan and
Carlson?
No,
John
Anthony West. Yeah, John Anthony West was kind of saying like, yeah, I should probably read his stuff. I just didn't.
They're really entertaining, Jade. John Anthony West. Too bad. You can hang out with Sitchin now, though. Okay, so magnetic rock. So 6, no volcanoes. Some of the moon's craters originated internally, yet there is no indication that the moon was ever hot enough to produce volcanic eruptions, except for all that lava on the surface.
Yeah.
But that's what they're saying. So there are some craters that appear to be volcanic in origin, and then there's evidence of enormous lava flows, but there's no other evidence that the moon was ever hot enough internally to do that. That doesn't mean that it wasn't. They're just saying that they haven't
found any
right.
yet.
7, moon mask. I'm not sure how to say this. Mascons or mascons? Masons? It's Mascons. Sounds like looks like mascons to me. Mascons, which are large, dense, circular masses lying 20 to 40 miles beneath the centers of the moon's Maria. Okay, so you know that when you look up on the moon, you see these dark patches.
Yeah.
Those are they're called seas or the Maria. So like there's the mare umbrium, you know, the mare. They're called mares or Maria.
Okay.
The dark patches are. In the very center of each dark patch, there's an enormous disc-shaped thing deep beneath it.
How do they know that? From like...
Let's see. It says, so yeah, they're 40 miles across. Their circular masses are lying 20 to 40 miles beneath the centers of the moon's Maria. They are broad disc-shaped objects that could possibly be some kind of artificial construction. Huge circular discs are not likely to be beneath each huge Maria, centered like bullseyes in the middle of each one by coincidence or accident.
That's weird. How do they know that they're there if they're 40... How far down?
This doesn't say how they know.
How far down are they? 40?
20 to 40 miles.
40 miles down.
Yeah.
Buried?
Yeah.
40 miles down?
Yeah, so I'm assuming it's seismic that they...
Yeah, they must have... They hit it with a hammer and...
Yeah. 8. Seismic activity. Hundreds of moonquakes are recorded each year that cannot be attributed to meteor strikes. In November 1958, Soviet astronomer Nikolai A. Kozyriev of the Crimean Astrophysical Observatory photographed a gaseous eruption of the moon near the crater Alphonsus. He also detected a reddish glow that lasted for about an hour. In 1963, astronomers at the Lowell Observatory also saw reddish glows on the crest of ridges in the Aristarchus region. These observations have proved to be precisely identical and periodical, repeating themselves as the moon moves closer to Earth. They are probably not natural phenomena. So we have the same thing, like you have all these quakes and then there's like weird earthquake lights. What's going on over here?
Okay, in astronomy and astrophysics, a mass concentration, or mascon,
is
a region of a planet's planet or moon's crust that contains a large positive gravitational anomaly. So Brett's saying that these disks cause a local increase in gravitational pull.
Oh, that's how they detected them, yeah.
Mass concentration.
Mascon.
Mask off.
Cool.
More Miyagi.
Mask on, mask off. 9. Hollow moon. The moon's mean density is 3.34, I think it's grams per centimeter per cubic centimeter, which is 3.34 times the equal volume of water, because water is like 1 per cubic centimeter, right? So the Earth's mean density is 5.5 grams per cubic centimeter. What does this mean? In 1962, NASA scientist Dr. Gordon MacDonald stated, if the astronomical data are reduced, it is found that the data require that the interior of the moon is more like a hollow than a homogeneous sphere. Nobel chemist Dr. Harold Urey suggested that the moon's reduced density is because of large areas inside the moon where there is simply a cavity.
Hollow moon!
MIT's Dr. Sean C. Solomon wrote, well, he's Solomon, he knows everything. The lunar orbiter experiments vastly improved our knowledge of the moon's gravitational field, indicating the frightening possibility that the moon might be hollow. In Carl Sagan's treatise, Intelligent Life in the Universe, which is a book that he wrote, the famous astronomer stated, a natural satellite cannot be a hollow object.
Yeah, either that or, what is it? Damn it, I can't even think of the name of my own freaking hypothesis. Elastic universe hypothesis states that you cannot necessarily calculate the mass of an object based on
its gravity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the gravity not directly connected.
Yeah. And I think they're measuring the mass by taking it here. You know what I mean? So like they bring pieces of the moon back and they're getting all these measurements of its weight so that you get grams per cubic centimeter.
But they also know the size of it and the distance it is from Earth and its speed.
Yeah.
Right? So you figure...
Yeah. Yeah.
They're using that to figure its mass too, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that they're using that to figure the mass.
Like the total mass.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right.
So it's like, in other words, they're saying it's too big for the density.
The density,
gravity.
The density of it seems to imply like the density of the stuff that they've gotten, and then the density that they're seeing based on gravitational, calculations from the Earth.
Right.
Okay, so it's two things. They're measuring density of everything they brought back.
Right.
And then they're looking at the density of the entire thing as a whole and saying that based on the density of the stuff we have and the density of the thing out there, it seems to be hollow because this stuff is too dense to make up for the mass of the, for the whole thing to be
Right.
a single piece.
It would be too massy.
Right.
And thus the gravity would be greater.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Right.
So it can't be that massy.
Right.
So it's got to be hollow
Yeah.
because it's too big.
Right. And you're right. That is based on a calculation of what its total mass
Right.
mass is from here, but also the mass of the stuff that they brought back.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. But then they also have this part, Moon Echoes, number 10. On November 20th, 1969, the Apollo 12 crew jettisoned the lunar module ascent stage, causing it to crash onto the moon. The lunar module's impact, about 40 miles from the Apollo 12 landing site, created an artificial moonquake with startling characteristics. Oops. The moon reverberated like a bell for more than an hour. This phenomenon was repeated with Apollo 13, intentionally commanding the third stage to impact the moon, with even more startling results. Seismic instruments recorded that the reverberations lasted for 3 hours and 20 minutes and traveled to a depth of 25 miles, leading to the conclusion that the moon has an unusually light or even no core.
Yeah. So it's like a bell.
Yeah.
It's like you hit a solid steel ball with a hammer and it doesn't, like, it's not going to ring for
Yeah.
very long. But
Well,
if you make it hollow, you'll hear
If it was really big, it would.
Yeah.
But a little solid steel ball is not, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Not a good example.
But if you had an enormous moon-sized solid steel ball.
Yeah, it would ring for a long time. But that's, yeah.
No,
That's
I
a terrible
think-
example.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking of a hollow one, not solid steel. Like if you had a hollow steel ball that was like small, it probably wouldn't ring very much. But if it was bigger, so that you know what I mean? Is that not right?
Well, I don't know. I was thinking that I was just wrong about that period because it depends on how you suspend it, right?
Yeah.
And steel is crystalline and it's going to vibrate a long time.
Yeah.
So, bad example.
I remember at the Franklin Institute, they had this thing where these heavy metal ball, probably steel, would drop out of a chute in the ceiling, and then they had all these plates that were tilted, and they would ding, ding, and they would bounce from plate to plate. And they didn't ring. They would go bink.
It would probably ring more audibly, if it was hollow.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Stop turning off phone. Okay.
I shouldn't just mouth off about shit like that without really thinking about it first.
So number 11, unusual metals. The moon's crust is much harder than presumed. Remember the extreme difficulty the astronauts encountered when they tried to drill into the Maria? Does anybody remember that?
Nope.
Surprise! The Maria is composed primarily of ilmenite, a mineral containing large amounts of titanium, the same metal used to fabricate the hulls of deep-diving submarines and the skin of the SR-71 Blackbird.
Hell yeah.
Uranium-236 and Neptunium-237, elements which are not found in nature on Earth, were discovered in lunar rocks, as were rust-proof iron particles. Pillar of Delhi, anyone?
Yeah, that's
So they're building the pillar out of moon iron.
moon iron. Moon ironium.
Lunar iron. Moon ironium.
Lunar ironium.
12. Moon's origin. Before the astronauts' moon rocks conclusively disproved the theory, the moon was believed to have originated when a chunk of Earth broke off eons ago. Who knows from
Out of
where?
the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah. Another theory was that the moon was created from leftover space dust remaining after the Earth was created. Analysis of the composition of moon rocks disproved this theory also. Wait a minute. I thought the moon rocks were made of different shit from the dust. Another popular theory is that the moon was somehow captured by the Earth's gravitational attraction, but no evidence exists to support this theory. Isaac Asimov stated, "It is too big to have been captured by the Earth. The chances of such a capture having been affected and the moon then having taken up a nearly circular orbit around our Earth are too small to make such an eventuality credible."
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It would be elliptical if it captured it.
Right, and the moon has the most circular orbit of any body in the solar system. It's almost perfectly circular. It still is
Which
slightly
lends credence to the Sumerian story. Right?
I don't know, because according to the Sumerians, the moon is Kingu, which was ejected by Tiamat before her encounter with Nibiru. Remember, she was making all these generals.
Yeah, but it wasn't like thrown away. It was one of her moons.
Right.
And when
But she was making them in preparation for well, I guess you don't know what the time spans are.
Yeah, that's going to be like fucking long time.
Yeah.
Right?
But if it was, because she ended up having 5 of them or something like that, all of which were destroyed except for Kingu in the battle with Nibiru.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if she has a moon and then she's like broken into bits, like that moon is already synced up with the planet.
Yeah.
Then it gets impacted, and it seems more likely that you could have such a circular orbit if like the impact causes both of these parts to be blown away.
Yeah.
In the same direction.
Yeah,
And
that's
kind
true.
of, like one of them ends up way bigger than the other one, but they're both kind of moving towards the inner solar system.
Oh, you
at a
mean
relative?
You're saying that the moon is actually the remnants of Tiamat's other side. Is that what you mean?
No, I meant the moon is one of Tiamat's moons that
Yeah.
was like pushed by the explosion of the impact
Yeah.
with Nibiru.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, that makes
so
sense.
like it's completely like it's been just utterly destroyed on its surface by the debris and shit from
Right.
Nibiru.
And if it was Tiamat's moon, it's also like the oldest moon in the solar system, which gives it a long time for its elliptical orbit to normalize into a circular one, right? So the older it is, the more circular the orbit will become.
Okay.
over
Well, I
time.
was thinking of that, and I don't know. Yeah, that I wasn't thinking. I was thinking that its whole orbit around Tiamat gets disturbed by the
Yeah.
impact, but that this massive piece of Tiamat comes off, which is Earth, and they both are headed. They're both traveling sort of in the same direction towards
Yeah.
the inner solar system, and so once they both end up getting captured by the sun,
Yeah.
so that their motion becomes relatively stable to each other.
Yeah.
in that
It is
process.
kind of hard to explain that if that's what happened, why it's the whole 400 distance from sun plus the size. And that's kind of weird.
Yeah,
Because that still would.
it's just coincidence, man.
Can't cite coincidence because you don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay. So yeah, we're going into that. 13, weird orbit. Our moon is the only moon in the solar system that has a stationary near perfect circular orbit. Stranger still, the moon's center of mass. This is weird. The moon's center of mass is about 6,000 feet closer to the Earth than its geometric center, which should cause wobbling, but the moon's bulge is on the far side, away from the Earth.
So it's kind of like a teardrop almost. Like,
Yeah, there's a bulge on the far side, but its center of mass is on the side closer to us.
yeah,
That's weird.
but that kind of makes sense. Why we always see the same face, right? Because the center of mass that's closer to us is being held.
Yeah, because there's 2 points for the gravity to grab onto. That's what you mean. Like Randall Carlson does the thing with the example with the pin, where he puts a pin on the table, and then he holds it with one finger, and he's like, now try to spin it, and you can spin it real easily under his finger. But if he holds it with two, you can't fucking spin it, right? And so that's like, if there's two centers of mass or two centers of gravity on the moon, that's why it can be locked to where one side always faces us from the Earth's gravity, right?
Yeah, I was thinking more like an arrow flies, because there's like the heavier part is in the front and the lighter part is in the back.
Okay.
So like you grab the moon, you grab
This is
onto
coming
the
down
moon.
to arrowheads, is that?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so ready to go digging. Dang it. Anyway, don't have time. But yeah, so you latch onto the moon with the rope and you start swinging it around you, right?
Yeah.
And it's whatever this doesn't make any sense. It's completely the opposite. The heavier part would go to the outside.
Right.
But because gravity is the force is going the other way, maybe the heavier side
Yeah, it's being
points
pulled
towards the
this way.
Earth. Yeah.
Yeah. It's being pulled
The-
this way. So it's
the
got a
lighter-
bulge. It's got a bulge on the far side, which is the lighter side, apparently. Right? But its center of mass is closer to us, which is the side that the gravity is pulling it towards. But its geometric center is in between those two things.
I was kind of like imagining that lighter side is like, the little kid on the edge of the merry-go-round that's like, freaking flying off back there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been that guy before.
Yeah. And if you're standing in the middle of the merry-go-round, then he's always facing you.
Yeah, that's
He's
right.
hanging on for dear life.
And if you have a rope attached to whatever it is you're swinging around, it's always going to be facing the same side too.
That's true. Terrible example. This is just bad analogies. This is the Bad Analogies Brothers of the Serpent podcast. I'll keep coming up with these.
All right. Moon diameter, number 14. How does one explain the coincidence that the moon is just the right distance coupled with just the right diameter to completely cover the sun during an eclipse? This is what I brought up before. Again, Isaac Asimov responds, there is no astronomical reason why the moon and the sun should fit so well. It is the sheerest of coincidences, and only the Earth among all planets is so blessed in this fashion. Yep. We already kind of went over that one. So 15, spaceship moon. As outrageous as the moon as a spaceship theory is, all of the above items are resolved if one assumes that the moon is a gigantic extraterrestrial craft brought here eons ago by intelligent beings.
It's just covered in dust.
This is the only theory that is supported by all of the data, and there are no data that contradict this theory. Greek authors Aristotle and Plutarch, and Roman authors Apollonius and Ovid all wrote of a group of people called the Proselynes, who lived in the central mountainous area of Greece called Arcadia. The Proselynes claimed a title to this area because their forebears were there, quote, before there was a moon in the heavens, unquote. This claim is substantiated by symbols on the wall of the courtyard of Kalasaya near the city of Tiwanaku in Bolivia, which record that the moon came into orbit around the Earth between 11,500 and 13,000 years ago, long before recorded history, but right at the exact right time for the massive cataclysm at the end of the Ice Age.
Wait, what happened? I was thinking of a terrible analogy, and then what happened 12,000 years ago with the moon?
In the courtyard of Kalasaya, which is in Tiwanaku in Bolivia.
Oh, yeah.
It is recorded that the moon came into orbit around the Earth between 11,500 and 13,000 years ago.
That's fucking...
Yeah. Number one.
So before that, no moon.
That's right. And that is a like, you can find that in other places around the world. I don't have any before.
There should be a way to figure out if that's right, because
but not if it's a spaceship.
No, but I mean, but it is, whether or not it's a spaceship, it still affects the tides, right?
Yeah.
And there should be some type of evidence in like ice cores or whatever the fuck.
That there were no tides previous to that?
Yeah, there's got to be some way to figure that out. Like, how long's the moon been here, dudes? Like, let's figure that out. Of course, they wouldn't even go looking for that because they're like, it's been here for billions and billions.
Well, it's older than the sun, so it's obviously been here a long time. You're like, yeah, but what if it wasn't here? I mean, it does seem strange, like...
that would be fucking crazy if it just showed up like 12,000 years ago. And maybe that's why everybody started building whacked shit.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, think about if like, we know humans were around for a long time before that. If we had sort of an advanced civilization and the moon showed, like, if it was just seafaring, then the moon shows up and starts causing tides, dude, like, that would just fuck everything up. Yeah. It's a flood. No, it's a tide. Then he goes back down and he comes back up. Oh, it's a flood again. Nope. Let's see. Okay, Age of Flashes. Aristarchus, Plato, Eratosthenes, but it's a bunch of names here. Rabbi Levi and Poseidonus all reported anomalous lights on the moon. NASA.
Maybe that's... I'm sorry. I'm still stuck on that. Maybe that's why agriculture suddenly began like 12,000 years ago at Göbekli Tepe.
Because suddenly we had a way to make a calendar?
No, because like before, when the moon isn't like fucking up shit all the time.
Oh, okay.
Like there was just, it was like Garden of Eden, abundance all over the place. And then like it shows up and just like wipes out a bunch of shit because it's changing everything.
I got you.
Glaciers start breaking and shattering and doing all the kinds of shit, and everything becomes unstable. And so then it's like, we have to save all these seeds from all these plants or whatever, and they're all going away, they're all dying, and we got to develop a way to like make them grow here.
That's interesting too, because that puts the Ice Age as being the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
Like, normally Ice Age, everybody assumes like, oh, the whole world sucks and everything, you know, but that's really interesting. Like, the moon shows up and starts destroying shit, and then we have to go into agriculture because we can't just walk around and pick fruit off of trees anymore.
Yeah.
That's really, that's...
And then it's like the oceans were 400 feet lower and all that shit, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's probably a terrible...
No. It makes me think of there's another theory that I can go through later. Okay, so...
Trust me, guys. Usually I'm like way better at coming up with great theories. I come up with the greatest theories. And I've met a lot of people who have a lot of great theories, but...
I love great theories. They're great.
My great theories are the greatest, usually.
NASA, 1 year before the first lunar landing, reported 570 plus lights and flashes were observed on the moon from 1540 to 1967. So they were doing research on lunar transient phenomena before they landed there. They were like, well, we should probably figure out what this stuff is before we land. And they found accounts of over 570 different transient phenomena on the moon. Let's see, Operation Moonblink. NASA's Operation Moonblink detected 28 lunar events in a relatively short period of time. Doesn't say how long. The Lunar Bridge. On July 29th, 1953, John J. O'Neill observed a 12-mile long bridge straddling the crater in the Mare Crisium. In August, British astronomer Dr. H.P. Wilkins verified the presence of it, saying, "It looks artificial. It's almost incredible that such a thing could have been formed in the first instance, or if it was formed, could have lasted during the ages in which the moon has been in existence." Like,
So it's still observable.
yeah, it's still there. It's a. I mean, you can look for pictures
Just
of
the
it.
way that was written, it was just like, briefly, he observed a bridge. I was like, what?
Oh yeah, on July 29th, 1953.
Yeah. It was just like,
He observed
he's just watching the moon and this bridge is like,
It's transient. Yeah. Okay. The Shard. The Shard is an obelisk-shaped object that towers 1.5 miles from the Ukert area of the moon's surface, which was discovered by Orbiter 3 in 1968. Dr. Bruce Cornett, who studied the amazing photograph, stated no known natural process can explain such a structure.
light our moon. Come on.
Yeah. The Tower, one of the most curious features ever photographed on the lunar surface by the Lunar Orbiter, photograph number 3 at number 3A4M, is an amazing spire that rises more than 5 miles from the Sinus Medi region of the lunar surface.
Shit.
It's okay. We're fine.
All right.
Time is relative.
Yeah.
The obelisks. The Lunar Orbiter 2 took several photographs in November 1966 that showed several obelisks, one of which was more than 150 feet tall. The spires were arranged in precisely the same way as the 3 Great Pyramids in Giza.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that's a list of...
Is that it?
Yeah, that's why I was saying we're cool. We got to take a break here. But
I was just like, fuck it, let's just make it a 2-segment show.
a 2-segment show.
We're almost at an hour here. We're at 47 minutes or something.
Well, you want to keep going? Just forget the break?
Yeah, fuck those breaks. We don't have any sponsors.
Shh. Wait, they would know because they would hear them.
Brothers of the Serpent. Brought to you by Snake Bites. Yeah, that's badass shit.
So all of this stuff, there's structures on the surface that can't be explained by, that can't really be,
The official show observer is very excited about a 2-segment show. No breaks.
or a 2-segment, right? Not just a 2-segment show. Or you mean just like one break?
Yeah.
In between two?
Yeah, I was just saying we'll just take one break. And just
Okay,
come back
because I was like, wait a minute.
and we'll keep talking about the moon. I'm just kidding. Anyway.
But think about the idea that it's like, so if it's hollow, and the other thing, the one that wasn't mentioned in here that I always find fascinating is that there is a ratio between crater width and depth. There's a standard ratio. Like the width of the crater you should be able to take that width and then figure out how deep it should be.
What's the crater width and depth ratio, Brett? I want to know.
But on the moon, there is no crater that's deeper than 3 miles, despite how wide they may be.
I wonder if that's because of the dust that came from somewhere else.
That filled it up?
Yeah. It's like the dust rolled in and just like kind of
Well, you
made
can see the
everything-
central. You can see the central structures.
like the little peaks in the middle.
Yeah, and like if it was a big, deep crater filled up with dust, then the central structure would be hidden, at least on some of them. Like there are ones that are like they look weird because they're enormously far across, but they're so shallow relative to the width. They don't look like craters, but they are. They have the central structure of a crater, right? Whereas you look at Meteor Crater in Arizona, it's got this definite bowl shape. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, on the moon, there are no craters that are deeper than 3 miles. That's just, what is he saying here? Okay, depth to diameter ratios of 1 to 5 or 1 to 7.
large craters. Okay, those are small craters.
Yeah.
In large craters, however, gravity causes the initially steep crater walls to collapse downward and inward. Okay.
Right, but that doesn't. The crater walls may collapse, but it'll still have this ratio. The depth is not changed by that. A little bit it will be because of the walls.
What he's saying is that the walls collapse, so you can't see the true depth because it's a very large crater would have that initially have that ratio, but the walls will fall in because it's too much. So you can't.
Well, on the moon, you can still see the walls. Like, that's what I'm saying. The walls are, I mean, like, the moon.
I was getting that. That's from Earth.
Yeah.
Probably.
On Earth, it's like that. But on the moon, there's very little change over time with stuff except for from impacts. So it's strange when you have these enormous craters that are not deep at all, but you can still see the central. Because again, if the walls are collapsing and filling the crater in, you'll not see the central structure.
Yeah. So it's saying in simple craters that are relatively small, with a depth to diameter ratio of about 1 to 5 to 1 to 7, and a smooth bowl shape. In larger craters, however, gravity causes the initially steep crater walls to collapse downward and inward, forming a complex structure with a central peak or peak ring and a shallower depth compared to diameter, 1 to 10 or to 1 to 20. The diameter at which craters become complex depends on the surface gravity of the planets.
Okay, well, there are craters on the moon that are the ratio is much smaller than 1 to 10 or 1 to 20. I mean, I've seen ones where it's a huge circle, but it looks like, think of a circle that's a foot across just from perspective, and then its depth is going to be half an inch.
Yeah.
That's too shallow.
That's 1 to 24, bro.
That's too small. But so the other thing about it is that they're all the 3 mile depth is a marker. In other words, like you have craters that have the right ratio of diameter to depth until you get to where they should be more than 3 miles, and they're all 3 miles after that.
Right. I gotcha.
Which basically implies that there's a shell of incredibly dense or incredibly strong material.
Titanium.
3 miles. It's not strong enough to survive impacts.
I don't know.
Like we're talking, impacts of things that would make these enormous craters. Like, there are huge craters on the moon, and it doesn't make any sense unless there's a shell, which would be a hull. Because it's going to be made of some material that we don't know of. There's nothing we know of that would survive impacts that would make these enormous craters. That can survive it. There's so much.
I was saying titanium just because they were finding titanium.
Yeah. What I'm pointing out is that there is no known material, alloy or element that we know of that can survive the energy output of an impact of these sizes.
Maybe it's moonium.
That's probably what it would be called if you ever find it. Lunarium.
I don't know.
Moonium.
Moonium sounds better. No, really, lunarium is probably what they'll pick. Assholes.
What is he saying here? Because of isostasy, no substrate layering, or curvature of the moon. Radius, diameter differences for Mare versus Terra craters are either absent or are equivocal. The ratio of apparent diameter to rim crest diameter averages 0.83 for smaller craters. Yeah, the smaller ones don't matter in this particular. Let's see. Lunar craters have widely varying ratios because regardless of size, they never get deeper than 3,400 meters.
That's weird.
3 miles. Yeah, so the ratio is thrown off by anyone that should be deeper than 3,400 meters or 3 miles. Which, again, I'm saying implies that there is a shell around the moon of incredibly strong, like something so strong that we have no idea what it is. Like there's no known material that can survive impacts of extremely large objects coming in at 30,000 miles an hour. It just doesn't appear to be damaged by it because there's places where they're overlapping. You've got a big circle and then there's another big circle on top of that one and then another big circle on top of that, and none of them go deeper than 3 miles. So it's been hit 3 times in that same spot and it's fine.
The moon is hardcore.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever been hit 3 times in the same spot, but you're not fine after it happens.
The moon's been totally fucked many times in the same spot.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah. And it's pretty scary to look at the craters on the moon and realize that because the Earth's gravity is a lot stronger, that it's going to have been hit way more than that.
Yeah.
Unless the moon is like a really old spaceship, which would explain all those craters.
Yeah. It's just hauling ass through space
Right.
with nails. It's like, we need to build this massive spaceship out of shit that just doesn't care.
That's right.
Doesn't carry them.
Yeah. Does not give a fuck you. So I think that there was a whole book written by a couple of engineers called, I can't remember the basic premise of the book was that the moon is a spaceship, and he gave us all this information plus a lot more, on on the moon being all the evidence points to it being an enormous artifact. Like I wouldn't say
Sounds
shit.
like a David Bowie song. The moon is a spaceship.
Yeah. Major Tom.
The moon is a spaceship, Major Tom. I've hit you 3 times in the same spot and you still don't give a fuck. If he didn't write it, he should have.
You heard it here first, folks. The David Bowie Moon is a Spaceship song with the Did Not Give a Fuck Yum as the whole material.
Traveling across the cosmos
In the moon. But I think it's fascinating. Like,
Only a fucking lunatic would do that.
this is fucking lunacy. And maybe that's why it drives us crazy. You know, when it's full, we go nuts because we know it's a fucking ship. We've spent all this time looking for aliens and evidence of aliens, and there it is every fucking night. It's up there in the sky going, I'm the ship, you stupid fuckers.
Yeah, so seriously, we need to go build a base on that ship.
That's right. They're wondering, like, is there water here? Yeah, it's full of water. It's a spaceship. Probably used it for fuel.
Gary, the humans are building a fucking lunar something on our spaceship again. Get out there and wipe them off.
Wipe them off. Turn on the moonship wipers. Well,
God dang it, they're building a base on our ship.
But if you build a ship, you know, and I was going to say, you have to say in this context, that's no moon. From Star Wars, of course, you know.
Yeah.
They seem to be around that moon right there. That's no moon.
It's the Death Moon.
Right. So everybody ridicules this moon as a spaceship idea by comparing it to the Death Star. But no, everyone knows that the Death Star is out there around Saturn. If you look out there,
Maybe it was our spaceship.
it could have been our space. That's
Like,
that
we
could
just
be how
forgot-
we got here.
Yeah. We came here. We are the Anunnaki.
The moon is the Garden of Eden.
Okay. You threw a wrench in my spoke thing. But anyway, yeah, we like come down here. We're out of gas. We're like, we need gas. And we come down here.
And then a cataclysm happens right after that.
Yeah, and we're like, fuck. We brought the only module down here. Got destroyed.
Shit.
So we're like stuck here for
Yeah, because
thousands of
we
years.
became dumb. Everybody got wiped out by the cataclysm except for like the ensign or whatever.
Some of us mated with some other strange creatures that were here. And
So the civilizer gods were coming from the moon. They were the ones that stayed up there. And they were like, shit, look, they're all fucking stupid now. And they came flying down here to try to civilize us again. And then they left. Promised to return. Went back into cryosleep to hope that we would become civilized again eventually. And then we could come back to the moon and leave because we weren't going to stay here.
yeah, that would suck if the moon just tore off one day. We're like, oh, oh no.
Yeah, like the other thing about it being a spaceship, like the type of orbit that it has and the fact that it's so perfectly aligned with the sun makes it seem like it was a calculated orbit, right?
Yeah. Maybe it has like a variable density, you know, if the standard model is right.
Oh, okay.
So that's how they travel. It's like they change the density. Like you make the density like really low, and then you accelerate.
Flick it, yeah.
And then you make the density extremely high so that it has tons of inertia. And it just never fucking slows down and it just rams through everything.
That makes
It's like
sense.
when you get close to a star system, you just increase the density so much that your freaking slingshot is like insane.
Yeah.
And then it comes near Earth and then it like decreases it to get that perfect.
The perfect orbit.
Yeah, it's like, and then maybe the sun was, they're like, let's just block out that sun. It's like insane. And we'll go down there, so they make a lunar eclipse.
Yeah.
Right. And they come down here and they do shit during the day.
Yeah. It is hard to explain that part of it. Like, even if it was a spaceship and they came here and made a perfect orbit around Earth, how did the 400 ratio with the sun and the distance and everything, why would you even do that? Like, the idea of that is, like, if I was coming in to go and do an orbit around a planet, I wouldn't care if my spaceship perfectly occulted the sun of that
They
planet.
were so OCD, dude. Like, the pilot was like, nope, just hold on one more minute. It's fine, dude.
The other thing is that the moon is the only moon object in the solar system that does not orbit perfectly around the equator of the body that it's orbiting around.
Yeah, it's tilted like...
Yeah, like 5 degrees or something like that.
6.
6 degrees.
Yeah.
7. Yeah. So that's also strange and applies some kind of artificiality or something drastic in the past, like Tiamat exploding.
That's really
Tiamat's equator was in a different place than the Earth's is now. So I think that was a good hour-long segment of moon mysteries. So now the next time you look up at the moon, you just go like, it's a fucking spaceship.
Yeah.
You can know that that's how we're going to get to the galaxy. Just got to get up there. And we don't need to build a base. Just need to go inside.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to Brothers of the Serpent. Brought to you by Moonships.
Moonships Incorporated.
Get your own moonship.
Built with do not give a fuck you.
Only $10 million every hour for the next 2 billion years. Moonships.com.
I bet there's snakes in there.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Coming to you from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science. High atop the dusty bones of the Edwards Plateau.
Stone bones.
Snakes in the dirt. Stones.
Snakes in the bones.
Snakes in the bone stones.
We need to build this tangent out of do not give a fuck him.
Yeah. So when you were talking about those the measurements and stuff in the beginning there leading to the moon, it made me think of this stuff. I was listening to been listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, great podcast.
Yep.
Going through favorite guests and listening to Randall Carlson stuff, and he was talking about some sacred geometry, and there's just all like I went to Italy recently with my boss's family, and this guy Felix, who is the husband of my boss's daughter, and he's from Germany, and like the whole time he's giving me shit that we use the imperial system, right? He's like you need to switch to the metric system. It's way better. This is way better, right?
Yep,
he's badass.
I see that on Reddit all the time.
So he's like, every time, like when we go to the store, we buy beer. He's like, you see, if you drink one of these, and it's like this and that. And he's like, he's using everything to like to tell me how much like easier it is to figure out.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
When we're driving somewhere, he's like,
exactly
see?
30 liters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, but this old one is like cool because it's got like weird like connections to precession and the earth and man, bro. But I couldn't remember any of them. But Randall Carlson's really good with just like rattling off all this shit.
Yeah, and like before you do that, we were talking about this before we started the show, right? And you had a great point about keeping the old one around.
Yeah. Okay. So the old one is one of the things that Randall said that I thought was a great way to say it easily, quickly, simply. That there are two fundamental things about the old system, the imperial system.
Yeah, two fundamental baselines.
Baselines, right? One of them is man, the measuring stick. Man is the measuring stick of the universe, right? We carry it with us everywhere. Mm-hmm. And the other one is the earth. So if there's some in every different type of measurement or every connection between these measurements, there is either the connection to man or the connection to the earth. So that made me think that, like, okay, all of these things that Felix is bringing up about the metric system were really badass. Like he was right. Like
basically,
it's so easy.
10. Yeah,
it's so easy to use and figure all this stuff out. But anyway, I was thinking that now that we have this high technology society, the metric system is great. But we need to also keep this old system. So you really want both, because if in preparation for, say, some cataclysm or some disaster or something where everything just, what the preppers are getting ready for, if that happens, you need the old system. You need to know it, because how do you figure out what a meter is?
Yeah.
Right? It's easy to figure out what a foot is.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter if it's like perfect or exact. It's a way to measure things. Your pace is a way to measure how far you've gone.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a freaking thing that's going to tell you, oh, well, we've gone so many kilometers, like.
Right.
But you can't figure out how many paces you've gone, and therefore you could say, well, I've gone about a mile.
Yeah. You could figure out a foot if you go to the equator of the Earth and run all the way around it and figure out how long that is. And then you divide that by the number of degrees in a circle times 1,000, 360,000. And then you divide that number by the exact number of days in the mean tropical year, which is 365.24 or something. That gives you a foot.
Yeah, you could do that.
But what I'm saying is, like, I think that's part of your point. Like, that takes the Earth, right, as the baseline for that. It's the equator of the Earth. But then it takes the circle. And that's because, again, you think of the circle as being an analogy to the Earth's orbit around the sun, because it's 360 days, 365, right? 360 degrees in a circle with 5 extra days, basically, is the way the ancients looked at it. They would have a 360-day calendar, and then they would have 5 festival days that were just not part of the calendar. Nobody did business, and, they just partied for these 5 days that weren't real, right? And they used that, like you say, the sexagesimal system, the base 60, base 12.
Yeah.
Right. So the foot is based on all of that. It's based on the Earth, and then the Earth's orbit around the sun, or the number of degrees in a circle, and both of those actually, because the orbit around the sun is the mean tropical year, 365.24 or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you do all that, if you take the equator and you divide it by the number of degrees in a circle times 1,000, and then again by the number of days in the mean tropical year, you get the foot. That's exactly where it comes from.
Yeah, that's badass.
Yeah.
So another one that Randall was talking about is and this is one we don't really use anymore. It's the only place you can find it really being used is in horse racing. It's the furlong.
Oh yeah, the furlong. Yeah.
Okay, which is 1/8 of a mile.
It's like a fathom.
Yeah.
I guess they use that in depth of water. It's the fathoms deep.
Yeah, fathoms.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was talking about the furlong, and then it's 1/8 of a mile, and it's like, well, what is a mile? We know a mile is 5,280 feet. Well, that's kind of weird, but mile, the root word there is mil.
Yeah.
Which is the Greek word for 1,000.
Right.
Because a mile is actually 1,000 paces.
Right.
And a pace is like basically 2 steps. So if you're going to count the paces you took, you would count every time your right foot hit the ground or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, a pace is roughly like the average pace is like 5.2 feet or 5 point,
Yeah,
you know,
close
right?
to 6 feet, something like that. Yeah, 5 to 6 feet.
which is like 1/100th of, or one, so 5.28
Yeah.
feet, 5,280.
yeah,
Anyway,
that's cool.
but if you go 1,000 paces, you've basically gone a mile.
Yeah,
right?
roughly. Yeah,
It's like 1,000th
unless
of
you're
a
a
mile.
real short person.
Right. So
or you're a giant.
right. So there's this thing. Okay. So the furlong is 1/8 of a mile, which is 660 feet.
Ah,
Right. Now, an inch is basically the width of your thumb at the knuckle,
yeah, the big knuckle.
or it's also like the length from the tip of your thumb to the center of the knuckle.
Yeah,
That's basically an inch. So those things are related together. But if you multiply the furlong times 12 inches, right? And then how many inches are in each foot? So 660 times 12, you get a number which represents the diameter of the Earth
whoa.
in miles, which is 7,920.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Right. So the inch is to the furlong as or wait, what is it? Yeah, 1/12 of
Yeah.
the
Of
of
the
the
foot?
diameter of the Earth or whatever.
Okay,
right?
so the furlong is to the Earth. Wait, is that
I'm
right?
sorry. Yeah, the inch is the mile.
Okay.
The furlong is the diameter of the Earth.
I got you. So the inches to the furlong is to the Earth, diameter of the Earth. That's badass.
Is that right?
Is that what you're saying?
The inch is to the furlong as the
Furlong is to the diameter of the Earth.
in miles. No, that's what I'm saying. Like
Oh.
what am I trying to say? There's the same number of inches in a furlong as there are miles in the diameter of the Earth.
Oh, okay. I got you.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I got you.
But like the weird. So you think, okay, but a furlong is 660 feet, which is strange, right?
Yeah.
Like if you don't know these connections, it's like, well, what good does that do me?
Right.
But because the mile is 1,000 paces, and 1/8 of that is the furlong,
Yeah.
and then like the point is that these ratios exist, and they're using man and the Earth. So it's like you could actually create something like the Great Pyramid and get really close to an actual scale model of some geometric thing, some Earth related thing, using your body.
Yeah, and that also points out that that there are all kinds of parts of our body that are correlative to the Earth in terms of size and ratio.
Right. So you go, I don't know, however many paces a furlong is, but 1/8 of 1,000. So somewhere,
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but
I don't know.
well, let's just figure it out.
1,000 divided by 8? It's like 120?
125.
Okay.
So 125 paces is a furlong, basically.
That's cool.
And then so that's just cool shit. And there's like Randall Carlson can go on and on about these different.
And the other way that it
connections.
starts to tie in also is with time. Like there's this weird thing where because time is also measured, we got 12 and 60.
Right.
That like numbers of things equal the numbers of things, and like the
it's the whole system. It's kind of dumb to like move from the imperial system to the metric system while keeping time in the imperial way, because that's fucking fuck shit up.
I've told people that before. I'm like, well, that your clocks are all based on the imperial system.
The whole system is a way to measure space and time.
Yeah.
It's all together.
Yeah, and there's weird correlations with like the number of I don't know any of them offhand. I was just listening to this thing that was talking about some of them though, but it's like the number of minutes in a day correlates to like some particular length of thing. Like it goes back.
Yeah,
and forth.
the number of minutes in a day is 1440.
Yeah,
1,440. And
right.
That's, that is half of a precessional age, isn't it?
Half of a precessional age is 1080.
That's right. What is it then?
1080 plus 360 is 1440. Right?
Yeah, 1440 is 2 times 720, so, right? Yeah, 1440.
Yeah.
There's this weird shit, like with geometry and time
Yeah, and I think the sun's diameter, that what I was talking about before, it's like 860 something, or 824,000 or whatever. 824,000 miles is the number of seconds in a day.
What is it?
Like the diameter of the sun in miles is like the same as the number of seconds in a day.
Yeah.
824,000 or whatever. Like,
Oh, yeah. Okay, 1440 is 1080 plus 360.
Yeah.
This is just weird. I love it that it's like whoever originally came up with this whole system was genius to connect them all in that way. Okay, so...
or that's what I'm saying. Like, are they connected already? Like,
Well, they obviously are
Yeah.
because we're on a ball, right, that's spinning.
no, it's flat.
So if you... But see, it was arbitrary to decide how many degrees to put in a circle.
Except for the number of days in a year. Like that was...
That's what I'm saying. Except, well, it's not exactly, but you pick something close, right? And they pick a number that's easily divisible in so many different ways, evenly.
Yeah, I think I get the idea that they viewed it because of what they did with their calendars, that they have a 360-day calendar and then these five, and some cultures did the whole Bacchanal, the 5-day festival. Other people just didn't do anything on those days, like they were not real.
Yeah.
I get the idea that they viewed those 5 days as an imperfection.
Yeah, right. But
I'm not trying
when you're
to
talking about math. Yeah, I know. I'm just thinking like when you're talking about like mathematical, like what's easy to divide things into.
Yeah.
365 or 360. It's easier to go with 360. There's way more whole numbers that are
right. Basic,
divisible.
yeah.
That it's divisible by. But still the choosing of like these, the 12s and 60. It's like those things are like you divide an hour into 60 pieces and then divide each one of those into 60 pieces each. And then when you're measuring, and that's for
then
time.
you divide the day in half and then give each half 12.
Right.
Yeah.
And then so that the night all has 12 and the day has 12.
Right.
So
but that also matches with the year because of the lunar cycle, which has nearly 12 orbits every year, which gives us the months. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but the moon is a spaceship, so it doesn't count. But then when they go to actually measuring the surface of the planet, and then they're like, well, let's since we'll go ahead and divide. We'll create this idea called degrees. Let's put 360 of them in there, and then we'll divide each one of those up into 60 pieces, and then divide each one of those pieces up into 60 pieces.
Yeah.
So we're doing the same thing that we do with time with space.
Yeah. Well, how does Randall put it? He's like, you take 360 and then you divide those each into 60 minute parts.
Yeah, minute parts.
Minute minute. And then you divide those minute parts into 60 parts a second time and you get the seconds.
Right. And it's both with space and time.
Yeah.
They're doing both. And so like using the old system of spatial measurement, you're like when you look at these temples and things that were built or whatever, they're lined up. They have astronomical alignments. They have proportions that are relative to proportions of the earth and man and all of this shit. And it's like
geometry.
it's like it's obvious they were correlating the two, time and space together when they built shit.
Yeah.
But you can't do that with the metric system.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Or if you
what is metric time? We don't have one.
That's what I'm saying. So like if you were to try to do that with the metric system, it's like, all these enlightened fellows that are just like, oh, it's way better, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10,000.
10, 100. Yeah, it's base 10. Okay,
Really
great.
easy. Okay, now
Measuring for dummies.
Yeah. So when they start to build something, they have to use geometry and they go back to 360 and freaking.
That's right. You're trying to build a circle in metric.
Yeah, it's just so it's if you're gonna measure the Earth, better to do it using the number systems that work with time, since we're moving around in space and time has everything to do with what the fuck's going on here.
Yeah.
You have to have a clock in order to measure the surface of the planet,
Yeah.
unless you have a satellite.
I've thought about this. Maybe this is a dumb question, but like the first time you're measuring the fact that so many of our measurements are based on some circumference of the Earth, how do you get that measurement initially? Like, do you like pull a string all the way around the whole planet? I mean, like, how do you do it when you don't have it?
Randall Carlson described this method of doing it, where, and I can't remember what it was. It was something about they put a rod in the ground.
Okay, yeah.
I know they measure the ratio of the shadow. Then that gives you the distance, the ratio of the distance from the height of the rod that you put to the sun. So then you have this idea of that distance, and then you can get the distance to some other body in space, and then you can triangulate and figure out how big the Earth is.
Yeah, I think doesn't it start like he shows the whole progression. You start out learning how far away you are from the equator or something like that, and then you right because of the way the shadow is. It'll be different.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but it's
there's a long progression where you end up being able to calculate distance to stars and shit like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's all from just you don't have to go very far to do it. You can move short distances and triangulate, and then you can figure out from that basically the size of.
But you have to have metrology already. This is my point. Like, since our measuring system is based on the circumference of the Earth, how do we get that circumference before we had that system?
See, I don't think that's what I'm saying. Is that it seems that whoever created this system knew those things. Like so you don't have to have you can choose a measuring system if you know the ratios, right?
I don't know.
If you have the ratio of the difference, like if let's say I walk so many paces, I put a staff in the ground, I measure the shadow and everything. Mm-hmm. Then I walk so many paces north.
Measure the shadow with what?
Measure the ratio of, like, draw a line. So what they would do is they put a staff in the ground, and then as the shadow was going along, they draw it. They draw the tip of the rod's shadow in the dirt around it, right? And it ends up with this little weird spiral thing.
Yeah.
And so you can measure the ratios, or the ratio that's built into the spiral, right? And then and I'm not saying necessarily using units, right?
Okay. That's what I mean. How do you measure something if you don't have a unit to use? I'm not really sure. Like, you have to basically be able to carry it with you, right? Maybe that's why they used the man as the measuring stick.
You can use, like, it would be like
four
saying,
arms.
well, I'm going to put a piece of string on the spiral and then cut it.
Yeah.
Like, there it is, one.
Right. One.
That's your unit,
That's
one
right.
string.
One cut string.
So then you move so many paces north, and that's your measurement stick. Mm-hmm. The paces that you walked north, and then you put another staff over there, and then you do the same thing with the shadow. Then you have a different size string.
Yeah.
Then you start to do math, and you figure out, basically you triangulate.
One string divided by string one divided by string two gives you the ratio.
Somehow, yeah. I don't remember how it's done, and I wish I would have looked into this more. I didn't know we were going to get into this detail, but I
remember the same thing too. I've just always wondered, how do you do it without units? Like, who did it first? They probably were using some other kind of units.
Yeah, my point is that it seems like the system was designed after they knew these ratios and these relative sizes, right? And then they're like, okay, well, let's come up with a system that's based on the object that we're measuring.
Yeah.
Now that we know basically and if you start out with man, and man is the measuring stick, like this is the ancient.
Inky is carrying around a DAPA, and he's like, okay, lay down.
This is what sacred geometry is all about. Like the idea that man is the measuring stick of the universe. And that's one of the things, like the Masonic.
That was one of our jobs when we were the Adamu.
Yeah, that's one of the Masonic traditions that they've passed on. Is like that idea, in geometry and all the ancient builders and all, it was based on that kind of shit. So
I could totally see it. Like, the pace is because, like Enki in the Sumerian tradition, Enki was the Anunnaki who did all the measuring. Like, he was the one that freaking surveyed everything, right? So he's got a Doppler running around with him. He's like, okay, run over to that thing over there and tell me how many steps it takes you. Enki's not gonna do all that walking. So of course the pace becomes based on a Dappa's step, and he's a man, right? How long is that thing? Go over there and figure out how long that is compared to your arm. Yeah. Enki just sits there, makes a Dappa do all the running around, and that's why you get the pace as part of the base measurement.
Yeah. And that goes back. I think we mentioned this before too. This idea that man is like in the middle of the scale of the universe.
Between the micro and the macro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's this very ancient idea that we are the measuring stick, right? Now that's sort of...
Or the mean, just the mean measurement. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Like, isn't the mean is the thing in between the extremes, right? Like a mean distribution or whatever.
Don't be mean.
Don't be mean, man.
That's a great meme.
That's why man is mean. That's a great meme. Don't be mean, man. Have you seen the Don't be mean, man meme? Man, this made me think of something. Oh, yeah. Naptoplaya.
Yeah, Brett's bringing up real quick the Vitruvian Man by Da Vinci.
Yeah.
Is listing all the ratios and body parts into total height in each other. Yes.
Yeah, showing that they're all based on phi. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. In Egypt, way out in the desert, way out in a place that's it was not inhabited by any of the dynastic.
You mean like Egypt?
Yes, far from the Nile, in a place that was not inhabited that we know of, and nowhere near there was inhabited that we know of by any of the dynastic Egyptians in any point in history of the ancient Egypt history. Okay, so it's out in the middle of nowhere in Egypt in the desert. There's a place called Naptoplaya, and it's also called the Calendar of Adam.
Yeah.
Has been referred to as the Calendar of Adam. It's a bunch of standing stones.
Yeah, it's like a big freaking standing stone.
But it's incredibly ancient.
Rather.
They've calculated that it's 7,000 to 9,000 BC. Now the standing stones aren't impressive or anything. They're not humongous, right? It really, what it looks like when you see it, it looks like a bunch of. I mean, they're rocks that you could carry. You could pick one up by yourself. They're maybe a foot or 2 feet tall or whatever. They kind of just stick up out of the sand. But they're all like, people started to look at it like, what is this? Because there was clearly somebody made it, but they're so old and it's been sitting out there for forever. They started to figure out that somebody was working out a calendar. Like,
I remember them showing like the lining them up was like marking the heliacal rising of like various different stars.
But the most fascinating thing to me about the Calendar of Adam is that there's a central area where there's, like Stonehenge or whatever. They're kind of all around in the central, but there are these outliers that are kind of way
out there.
And those turn out, like the distance from certain ones in this sort of central area to those turn out to be exact, like they exactly measure the distance relatively to different stars. Like this one, from here to here is like relative to the distance from here to here to different stars and shit. Like, in other words, you can use this to calculate how far away certain stars are in the sky, like Sirius, and that like that. So you're thinking like 9,000 BC, somebody's out there standing up rocks, and it probably wasn't a desert then. It was a savanna, or because this would be the period where the Sphinx was being weathered by all the rainfall, right? 9,000 BC. So it was probably not desert at that point. It was getting hit by monsoons, and it was probably a lush place. And so this dude's camping out there, figuring out how far stars are away from the Earth and standing up rocks to represent it.
Yeah.
And they're still there in the desert, the Calendar of Adam.
Yeah.
Like that.
It seems clear that our ancestors were just totally obsessed with the sky. Like, what's going on up there?
Yeah.
And the question is why? Why were they... And they built all this shit on the ground, the as above, so below thing. Like, why... we don't do that.
Yeah, sadly.
Like, very rarely are there in modern structures that are like, oh, well, we're going to make this,
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, we're building the tallest building in the world now.
Yeah, great.
Great. Nice.
Like that one in Dubai that they had to let twist. You know about that? Dad talked about that because Dad built lots of skyscrapers. So like when you're building enormous skyscrapers, ones that are like 100 stories above, they have this tendency to want to turn. The four corners kind of want to twist.
Did not know that.
And he says that, like, he was telling me that, like, when the people are building skyscrapers, they're obviously fighting this. So like as the building gets taller and taller, you're fighting more and more to keep the four corners like straight.
True, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this one in Dubai that they built, it's like it is now the tallest building in the world. It's enormous. They just had to let it go. They just had to let it turn. Couldn't find it anymore. So the building's
really
like weird. Now it's not something that you can really see visually, but it does definitely turn, right?
I wonder if it would be stronger if they like let it. If they
Well, I think that's why they had to do it.
Into
They had to let it happen so that because if they kept fighting it, it was going to weaken the structure. Because you're going to put all this tension in there and everything. You know? And then there's the what is this suspension bridge where they had to calculate the curve of the Earth for the two towers, because every suspension bridge has two support towers in the middle, and they were the bridge is so long that the towers were so far apart that they had to calculate for the curve of the Earth in between the two towers because they're not actually parallel with each other. Flat Earthers, take that one.
the debate is over.
That's right. This bridge would not work if the Earth wasn't round. Proof: water won't stick to a spinning ball. God, that video.
All right, we're at the 30-minute mark. Should we take a break or should we just go for a full hour?
Hard choice. Snakes. Let's just.
That's what I would have said if we took a break.
Let's just take the break.
All right.
So we're gonna take a break.
We're going to take the snake.
Take the snake. And welcome back to Brothers of the Serpent podcast segment.
It's my turn.
3. Normally would be Kyle's turn, but I'm doing it because it's actually the third segment.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
Snake Bros! Guaranteed 30% brain expansion.
Angels and demons and monsters and serpents and scarab hearts.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty good. So I want to talk about appearing people.
What?
Yeah. You know, people disappear. Well, sometimes people appear.
Like 6 billion of them.
Yeah, we got to do something about that. It needs to be 500 million. No, I'm not talking about being born.
Okay.
Fully grown people disappear. Just like people disappear sometimes. Like that guy in the news a couple of weeks ago.
They just found the path out of the shadows, man.
Yeah.
They just appear.
Yeah, so in the news, it was like 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, from New York State. This guy was at a ski resort there. He's a firefighter, which is, for some reason I find that interesting because there's missing 411 firefighters too that vanish. Like the guy that ran off chasing his dog and disappeared. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is a firefighter, and he was skiing in New York State, probably upstate somewhere, and he just disappears. No one can find him, and his family's freaking out. All of his stuff is still there, right? And it was like the middle of the day. He just suddenly just wasn't around, and but all of his gear, all of his belongings, and everything were still in the lodge, including his wallet, and but he was gone. And they searched for him, there's this humongous search for 6 days. And he turns up in California. Has no idea how he got there. Doesn't really have a memory of anything that and he's still wearing the ski clothes that he was wearing on the day he disappeared. All the gear, he's still wearing all of it. And he's in California.
You went down the wrong slope, buddy.
Now, of course, if you read the news stories about it or whatever, they're basically, since there's no answers, they're theorizing that he got hit on the head and then some trucker picked him up and took him all the way to California. Okay. Basically is what they're saying.
What?
And the way they didn't find him in California. Okay. He bought a cell phone with a credit card that he had in his pocket. And he just bought a burner phone and called his wife. He's like, I'm in California. How did I get here? Oh, the last thing he remembers is skiing down the mountain.
That's crazy.
Or I shouldn't say that. I should say the last thing he remembers is skiing in general. I can't say that he was like actually in the process of skiing and then he just wakes up in California. But yeah, he remembers being there and skiing and then he doesn't remember anything. He just suddenly he's in California.
Abduction.
And since then, the authorities have contacted like every major transportation company to find out which trucker picked him up. And of course, nobody's come forward, and like that's weird because this was in the news all over the
You might notice like if you're in the desert somewhere between New York and California that there's a guy wearing ski clothes looking for a ride, and you might see all the news stories and just be like, I haven't seen a guy like that anywhere. After you drove him all the way to California.
And the police in California did not believe him when he said that, when he told him, like,
I was skiing, man.
I was skiing in New York. Where? They're like, what do you mean where? This is California. Well, I was skiing. And he was like, look at my clothes, right? Obviously I was skiing.
Sure, buddy. Get in the car.
Then they, of course, they're kind of like, well, what's going on here? And then they find out that there's a missing man from New York that everybody's looking for, And they're like, oh, okay, so nuts. maybe a trucker. So that story reminded me of a bunch of stories of like people who just kind of appear in places where they couldn't or shouldn't be. And there's quite a few of these throughout history, but the one that's most often spoken of, this is a very strange story, is called the Green Children of Woolpit. Okay, it's a place in England, and I think in it's at the 13th century. Okay, so this is a long time ago. There are a bunch of farmers out there, and these two boy and a girl, these two children, just appear in a what was called a wolf pit. This is where the town got its name, Woolpit. There's an enormous trap there. Basically, they think it was for trapping wolves or whatever, but it's not really clear what it really was. It's an ancient thing. So they appear at the bottom of this thing, and they had decidedly noticeably green skin. Okay, and they were crying and everything, and they spoke a language that no one understood, that no one understood. It didn't seem to be any language that they'd ever heard. Now that's not saying a lot for people in the 13th century in England or whatever. But they took the children to the local landowner, which was a lord of the castle, right? And he actually ended up taking care of them, and he spent all this time trying to figure out what language they were speaking because nobody could talk to them, and he couldn't identify the language either with any of his, advisors and other people who are supposedly learned. And then, of course, there's the local, I don't know what they would call them, the priest, the guys in the church. They are also learned, could read and write, and they couldn't identify the language. But eventually, the kids wouldn't eat anything except for beans. The only thing they would eat is beans, okay? They rejected all of their food like they didn't know what it was. And eventually the boy just...
Sounds like they came from the Fey folk.
Yeah, the boy keeps getting sicker and sicker, and he eventually dies. But the girl, she eventually started to eat other foods besides beans over time, and it says that she eventually lost the green hue of her skin. She became normal looking, and she learned to speak English. And she eventually tells the story of them, that they came from a land called St. Martin's Land that was underground, that had no sun, but that was it was just naturally lit or whatever, where everybody had green skin. And her and her brother were actually herding something that was the equivalent of sheep. And they chased one into a cave, like a tunnel. Okay, they're underground, so they're in a cave of some kind. But they chased it into a tunnel, and they got lost in there. And then they saw some light, and they followed the light. And then instead of taking them back to their big open cavern that was lit, they came outside, which they had never seen before. And they were terrified, and the light was really bright to them or whatever. And yeah, it was a very strange story.
Wild.
But she ends up she got married and had children and everything, and lived a relatively normal life after that. But that was the story she told. And that's just a really odd appearing people story, right? There's another one that and this one's hard to confirm. Like a lot of people say that this is, what would you call it? Like an urban legend, but it doesn't seem to be an urban legend, but it's hard to corroborate. But anyway, this guy landed in Tokyo airport and he goes into customs and he shows a passport for a country that does not and never has existed. But the passport is full of stamps of countries that do exist. Huh. Okay. And of course, the customs officials there are like, what is this? And he shows them on the map. He's like, what do you mean it doesn't exist? Of course, I just came from there. And like, he shows them on the map but he's like, he was startled that it wasn't on the map. And he showed them where it was supposed to be. And I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was somewhere in Europe, a little tiny country. Okay. And like everybody was confused. Like the dude was like, why isn't my country on the fucking map? You know? And they're like, there's never been a country called that. And there's never been anything that, you know, so they don't know what to do with him. They can't let him into the country because his passport isn't from anywhere. And yet it appears to be like it's all worn and it has been stamped from all over the world, you know, and shit looks like he's used it everywhere. Like so they didn't know what to do with him. So they put him in a hotel with some guards by his door to figure out. They were like, yeah, we're put you up in this room in the hotel until we can figure out what to do. Well, according to the story, even though the door was guarded all night, the next day the guy was just gone. He was not in the hotel room, and he was never seen again.
Have you ever watched there's like a series, I think it's on Netflix, called Man in the High Tower or Man in the High Castle?
Sounds familiar.
That's what it.
I don't have Netflix.
It's like a fictional story set in like sort of modern times, but as if we didn't win World War II. As if the Germans and the Japanese won. And so like the United States is split into two. Like one side was taken over by Germany and the other side was taken over by Japan.
The Atlantic side is Germany and the Pacific side is Japan.
Yeah, and there's like a central area which is like the neutral zone between them.
Yeah.
And so, but there's some weird shit going on with these videos. And
that sounds familiar.
I may have talked to you about this before, but because I was watching, there were, I think,
the videos
one or two seasons, but the videos, like, you don't get to see them initially, but this person like sits down to watch one and it's like super secret and people are dying to get this video passed along. And it's like this chick's sister is like, take this, watch it. And she runs off and she's dead. So she watches the video and you just see her face while she's watching it like, what the fuck? Turns out the video is of an alternate reality.
Yeah.
Where they didn't win. You know, the Germany and Japan did not
showing
win.
our reality or whatever.
Yeah, some other reality. But there's and you find out there's all these videos that are going around, and Germany and Japan are trying to like not, you know, and Hitler's like obsessed with them. He's collecting them all. But he's freaking out. He's getting more and more paranoid because every video is like these other realities that, you know, or where they didn't win or something, you know. And it kind of turns out that there are all these alternate universes and some of the people have these weird things where they can pass through. And like one of the guys is this Japanese guy, and he does this meditation like nightly, you know, like he meditates or whatever, and like he starts to get control of it. And he can pass into one of the other worlds, and he goes into the other world. He's in the United States, you know. But he goes into the other world where the United States had won, and he sees all this stuff, and he's like, God, it's amazing, you know, in this other world.
That's cool.
But in that world, his life's all messed up and everything. It's like, I don't know, it's just weird. But that's
like in the one where the United States won, his life's messed up.
Like his family life and everything's like all messed up. But in the world that he's in, where Japan and Germany won, like he's like really badass and like solid. And so when he goes over to the other world, he's like a drunk and just like screwed up and everything, but he's not that guy when he goes over into his other person. Yeah. It's like his mind is traveling between the bodies.
Okay. That's interesting.
But it's actually, it's more in depth, and of course I don't have all the answers because they're still making it, right?
Oh, okay.
And sorry about spoiling. I know people out there.
Spoiler alert, late.
Whoops.
I never mind spoilers.
But okay, what I've watched has been out for a long time, so screw you if you're mad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not spoiling anything new. GFY.
Yeah, so that's what that makes me think of. Like these people, like that guy in the airport. He's like, he really did. Like he was going to all these countries in a different, like
Right,
parallel universe.
But in
or
that,
whatever.
but in that story or whatever, he would show up and he would have the right passport because he was just kind of moving minds between bodies that did exist here. Right. This guy shows up and has a passport for a country that doesn't exist. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true, but it's similar.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that like he like crosses over
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think too.
with his belongings and shit, and
Yeah.
like he's
in
just,
flight, dude, in the plane.
Yeah.
He somehow.
Yeah, because the plane that he was flying in was Malaysian Airlines, and, like you know, he just like shows up and he's
I
like,
shouldn't laugh at that.
yeah. Anyway, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It was the other Malaysian Airlines in the other world that
Yeah.
like actually landed here. That was called something else.
Yeah. The Malaysian the Flight 370 is. I mean, I don't even know what to say about
Okay.
that one.
Okay. Mass disappearances.
Yeah.
Malaysian Airlines. Like, how many people are on that plane? 200 and something or
Yeah.
whatever.
250,
It just
260.
vanishes and like there's no trace anywhere. And then like somebody picked it up over here and other people picked it up over there. And it was like, wait, no, it
Yeah, it was-
couldn't have been there because it was radioing over here.
Very Bermuda Triangle-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the way that it just like it did some strange maneuvers, and then there was some other weird stuff about what was on it and the people that were on it that were connected to like this ship, the Marines, like that
yeah,
thing.
that's right. That there was like this briefcase.
Yeah.
Okay, so that movie that came out about Captain whatever.
Yeah, the guy that got caught by the Somali pirates.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was captaining a
I
ship.
think it was Tom Hanks that played the
Yeah,
guy, right?
Tom Hanks
that,
played it, yeah.
that movie, whatever it was called. Like, there was actually supposedly, I think if I have this right, I could have this wrong, but there was like 2 Marines on that boat. I think it was that boat.
And they were guarding something.
They were guarding something that was being transported. It's like
Then they died on that ship because everybody but the captain died.
yeah.
But then their fucking IDs turned up.
Yeah,
being
their
used-
passports had been on that Malaysian Airlines.
Yeah, were being used by 2 people who got on the Malaysian Airlines. Yeah.
That's wild shit.
It's
man.
like, and then the ship the plane disappears. You know, like it's
I don't. Well, we have to look that up because I remember thinking I had that story figured out, and then I had think gotten some.
Cantu told you were wrong.
Yeah, I think so. Like there was some parts that, but that was a weird scenario because some of those stories like where the sources where I had read those things like I couldn't find later.
So you came from a different universe.
Maybe.
You read those in a different universe. You showed
Yeah.
up in this one where that didn't happen.
Yeah, I think I originally got here with the Roanoke colony, but that was another one that I was thinking of. like,
Croatoan. Right? That was what was written on that was one of
Yeah.
the only clues.
Croatoans or Croatoan,
Yeah.
written on the tree. So the Roanoke colony is like this colony that came over here from Europe or whatever. They brought this boat full of people.
And then the
They
boat
get off.
returned,
And
yeah.
they once they kind of get established or whatever, they've got some shit built and they've got they're kind of going well. The boat's like okay,
They're going to go back and come back.
They've
with
got
more
something
supplies and more
like
people.
sustainable. They've got shit figured out. They don't
Yeah.
need the boat anymore, so they go off and they get more people and they come back to the place and they go on shore. Nobody's there. There's
no
not a
bodies
single
either.
body there.
There's no bodies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It doesn't look like there was a struggle.
Yeah.
It's like everybody put down their shit and just left.
Yeah.
Completely vanished, and there's no trace and there's no evidence. And then it was just theorized that it was like this Indian tribe, the Croatoans or whatever,
Yeah.
that they were very warlike, and that was like carved into like a big central tree in the town square or whatever.
Yeah. But it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because there was no bodies and there was no sign of a struggle. And it's more like they
Yeah, that's just kind of like
missing 411 into the woods. Is what,
right, and that idea that it was the warlike Indian tribes that just destroyed this whole colony was just kind of like a
they threw it out there.
a
Just
script
like,
like
yeah. They threw out that the guy took a truck
right. He just got to ride it with a truck.
because there's no explanation and people don't like that.
Yeah, but that whole story is so similar to so many of these weird, disappearances of seemingly everybody that was building something somewhere in ancient times. Like we find all these structures that are just half built and just like everyone's gone.
Yeah. Or like, yeah, just like everybody just down tools and took off.
Right.
Giant blocks left in the road. so many of those ancient sites have enormous things in the quarry that are the biggest ones ever made, but were never completed. Like the unfinished obelisk is like, it's way bigger than any other obelisk ever.
I found out that obelisk actually has I think the reason why they never used it was because it actually has like some kind of natural,
that's what they say,
fissure crack in it.
Yeah.
They figured out, so they just left it.
So my problem with that is that they say that about a lot of these things that are left in the quarries, that there is some crack or some flaw. And I'm like, that happened everywhere in the world. The biggest ones that they carved were almost completed, and then they found a flaw all over the world. I'm just like, come on, show me the flaw.
So this kind of reminds me, I know I'm
No, it's all right.
kind of going off on a tangent, but I think I took a note of this.
Tangent.
This idea.
This is the tangent cube.
It's true.
You took a note of what?
This idea that I had, let's see. Okay, whoa, here's another idea that I had. Okay, I didn't write a note of this one, but I was thinking about Babel, the Tower of Babel, and the idea of like people just putting down their tools and just vanishing.
Yeah.
Right? That sort of idea that, anyway, with impacts, from extraterrestrial impacts or whatever.
Yeah.
There was one of these stories that I read when I was doing all this research on the Tower of Babel and I can't remember which tradition this is in, but it was something along the lines of like the people were mad that the gods had control of the skies. And the gods had commanded man to be on the ground, the terrestrial, you stay there, the skies are for us. And
Right.
And so these people were sort of rebelling against that idea. And this one guy was, they had the idea that the gods were immortal, right?
Yeah,
And they couldn't be killed. And so this dude
threw a spear.
throws a spear at one of them and it kills him. And he's like, they can't be killed. So fuck them. Let's build this tower into the heavens and blah, blah, blah.
They're mortal. Yeah.
Yeah. And it just occurred to me that like, okay, that could be them. What they're really trying to say is that these impacts
Can be stopped.
yes, they were the gods, just like the planets and all these stuff were the gods,
Yeah.
right? These heavenly bodies that come in and they destroy the world. Like, so the Tower of Babel is some 600 and something years after the flood,
Yeah.
which could have been caused by an impact.
Yeah.
And so they're like, what do we do, right? For this whole 600 years, they're still remembering like their total
Yeah.
annihilation pretty much. And they're like, can this be killed? In other words, they're asking themselves, can we develop the technology to destroy or to protect ourselves from these things?
Yeah.
And so they figure out like they build some shit or whatever, and they actually like hit one and destroy it or something of that
Yeah.
effect.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So then they're like, yes, we can do it. So they come together and they start building this massive tower. But one of the gods sees what they're doing and comes down and just destroys them. And
that makes it make sense why they said, so we shall not be scattered across the face of the earth.
right. So they were built in the process of developing the technology.
A name. They were making a name for themselves. A shim.
Yeah.
A ship.
Yeah. They were in the process of developing the technology to take out the next asteroid
Yeah.
or cometary impact or whatever, or nudge it like we are.
Yeah.
But they didn't do it in time, and they got hit by another one.
Didn't you say when you first told that, I think you said that he threw a spear and some blood fell to the earth.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't actually destroy it. He threw
Yeah.
the spear and the blood.
So like they did a test and pieces of it came, but it didn't hit.
yeah. So they figured out they could do it.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought just recently. Like, oh, fuck.
That's cool. Yeah, and an impact would cause a lot of people to disappear.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like that was how I was sort of tying it into what we were talking about, disappearing people.
Yeah, and I think I did see the theory on Malaysian 370 that somebody said that what if it got hit by a bolide up there and just completely disintegrated it? Like just it would be.
I thought that was my theory.
Did you say that? Some guy told me.
I don't know. Some guy told me that.
But back to like appearing people, and of course, in some sense, the people that appear have to disappear from somewhere, right? Like the guy skiing. So there's another one that's really strange, and this one's more corroborated. and I don't have all the details of this one, so I've got them in front of me, but it's 1593. Okay, so October 26th in Mexico City, a Spanish soldier suddenly is walking around the square, right? Plaza Mayor. He's in Mexico City's Plaza Mayor, and the guards there notice him, and like this dude's like fully decked out in Spanish like armor, you know? Okay. He's got the freaking, the weird Spanish armor hat and shit, conquistador hat. And he's like got his spear and he's kind of like staggering around like, but it looks like he thinks he's a god, right? He's kind of trying, and that's what he was doing because he was on guard. He gets arrested, and he tells them that he was in the Philippines, and that some political guy, the mayor or the governor, whatever, the magistrate had been assassinated. And so everybody was at high alert, and he was put on guard, and he was kind of like walking around in the Philippines in Manila. And then suddenly there's a bright flash of light, and next thing he knows, he's a little bit out of it, and he keeps trying to walk like he's on guard, but now he's in Mexico City. He doesn't know how the fuck he got there. And of course, nobody in Mexico believed him. All the authorities were like, whatever, dude. They throw him in the dungeon. They throw him in prison where he sits there for 3 months until a ship arrives from the Philippines. And that is the first news that they got of the assassination of the guy that this dude claimed was assassinated, which he couldn't have known if he was actually in Mexico City because, this is before the communication. So the ship comes with the news. After 3 months, it gets there and has the news. That's how long it takes a ship to get from the Philippines to Mexico. Yeah. Right? So they were like, maybe he was telling the truth? They can't figure it out. And so then they communicate with the officials on the ship, and they're like, yeah, like there is a guard in Manila that's named that. Like, the guy's name is, let's see, I got it in here, I think.
I'll forget. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Gil Perez, yeah, that was his name. So he they ask, and they're like, yeah, that's, and he kind of disappeared. So they put him on the ship, and he sails back to Manila. So apparently, he somehow teleported from the Philippines to Mexico.
Yeah, that's crazy shit.
Yeah, that's a really strange one.
It would really suck if that happened with like a planet.
Have you teleported to a different planet?
No, if a planet teleported right over here somewhere.
That's how the moon got here.
Boom. Shit.
Yeah, or a black hole.
Yeah, please don't teleport. Well, black holes are the
teleports.
That's the portal.
Holes can't teleport. Actually, wormholes do move around. They're worms.
Yeah.
So there's one more in here that I got that I found interesting, and this is let's see.
Yeah, that's definitely a serious engineering problem. Move this hole. Yeah, that's what they did to the temple, or that temple in Egypt that was near the Aswan. It was in the Aswan Dam area or whatever. It's like carved into the hillside, right?
Yeah,
and they're like, we need to move this temple, but
yeah,
it's like a hole.
Yeah, it'd be like moving one of those rock cut temples at Petra. We need to move this. It's just a hole, a really complicated one.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I got one more of these. I think it's in here. Is it in here? No, not Caspar.
Right, while you're looking for that, I'm just gonna mention this other little note that I took, which is totally off subject, but it's cool.
That's cool.
So, I was thinking about agriculture and how you can really develop this as a science, and how difficult that would be. Because typically now, when you become a professional at something, the Malcolm Gladwell idea is that
10,000 hours.
10,000 hours or whatever. So when you're playing an instrument or whatever, you get to do these things over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Well, if you're a farmer, by the time you're 50 years old, you've only done it 40 times. If you started at 10.
Yeah. That's true.
So it's how do you become pro at something you've only done that many times?
You live for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Is that not a good idea? The idea that people in ancient times seem to live a lot longer. Maybe they could have time to get good at it before they died.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. They did live longer.
Well, yeah. So if that's correct, that could explain part of it. Like, because like another problem, the problem with agriculture is like, who decided that they were gonna start culling these native grasses into grains, and that their great grandsons were gonna complete the job.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
So like, yeah, like that would work. More, I mean, even still, I wouldn't think if I lived 1,000 years, I wouldn't be like, I'm going to spend the next 400 years making this into food. Like, fuck that. That takes too long.
Yeah.
I mean, because you have to do it every year,
Right.
and like you're not going to get anything from it for like hundreds of years.
It's
like,
part of the same problem we talked about with figuring out procession. Like,
yeah,
if you decided at an extremely young age that you were going to very scientifically, measure the motions of the stars, by the time you're dead, you've noticed that something has shifted 1 degree
yeah.
of arc.
I think it's moved.
That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. But so on that, I would say that it's a little more explainable because, well, maybe not. I don't know. Like, I always think of astronomers as being science. So they're going to be keeping records, whereas farmers are just like throwing shit in the dirt and trying to grow.
that's we're growing shit, and I'm like, we've had these grapes for 2 or 3 years, and I'm still looking at them like,
I don't even know what to do. Yeah,
how are
I've been
these-
doing this for 3 years and I have no fucking idea what I'm doing.
and we have the benefit of like having the Oracle and fucking all these consultants and people that have been doing it for 30 years, and it's like, damn it.
Yep. I keep coming back to what the neighbor said out there.
Yeah.
About the time you figure it out, you die.
Yeah. All right. Quick aside. Go back. Where are we at?
The one that I was looking for is not in here. So,
From memory. Let's hear it.
well, I can't remember because it was complicated. It was basically like he was like a servant, and I think it was I can't remember if it was in France or England, but anyway, this guy kept disappearing out of his out of the place he was supposed to be in the castle and appearing like hundreds of miles down the road, and then he would like come staggering back this was again 1600s or something like that. So he has to walk back, and he like appears and he's all ragged and shit. He's like, what the fuck? I was like sleeping and I woke up in the road and like it was hundreds of miles away. And this happened to him multiple times. He kept just vanishing out of the castle and appearing like really far away.
Yeah, that would really piss me off. Like, when you're playing a video game and it like auto saves and like something happens and you're like, damn it, oh shit. I gotta go all the way back over here.
Yeah. Yeah, the power cuts out and you're like, fuck! You almost got to the bottom of the
But that happening in real life, like you just keep appearing like miles away. You're like, damn it!
Yeah. Fucking lag.
But that reminds me of like one of those hallucinations I had when I was a kid, where like I was in my living room and then like suddenly I
hold
was
on.
like way up in the fucking sky,
Yeah.
standing on something that seemed to be like some tight wire or some shit, and I'm
Yeah.
like up there with the very tops of the beech trees, way above the house, and then I'm back inside, and then I'm back out there, and I'm like,
Yeah,
no.
it's like
It happened a couple of times.
was anybody in there with you or anything? Like,
No.
Oh man, so it could have really been happening.
Mom and Dad had left. There was like a storm happening. It was like twilight.
Oh, shit, yeah.
And like I just appear out there in the middle of this fucking storm, and it's like,
And you're
the
like
trees are
trying
all-
to balance on this fucking
the
wall.
treetops are blowing around, and I'm like on this. It feels like I'm standing on a wire. I can't see anything, but I'm just like, oh shit. And the house is way down there, and then I'm back in the living room, and I'm like, well, what the fuck?
Have we talked about the quote unquote fevers you used to have on
Yeah,
this
yeah.
before? Okay.
I think I even told that story already on one of them, but
Man, that's and then there's the one where you
like, why couldn't it have put me down the street?
instead of up in the air, you teleported the wrong way.
But what do you think is happening? Seriously, like with this guy in California, and
To me, I like this, and then some of the missing 411 stuff, and then of course the Bermuda Triangle shit, and then like Malaysian Airlines. All this stuff seems like there's
there's some other rules of the universe we don't know.
that there's and I think things like the what we talked about last week, the bowl in the ocean, like shit like that, is implying there's some other forces that we just have no clue exist, right? And I think that if those interact strangely with because clearly they don't happen all the time. Like you can fly like millions of people fly through or sail through the Bermuda Triangle and nothing happens to them.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, something does happen, and it seems to be like a special event in like a storm. You know, like storms happen, but if you know, like imagine if they were completely invisible, right? If they were totally invisible, it would be, and then one day you're like walking around and suddenly you feel like you're getting pelted with shit. You're like, what the fuck? And you hear all this crazy noise, but there's nothing to see. You know,
That's kind of like dark matter, the idea that there's all of this shit that it's kind of what you were talking about last time, where somehow through the forces in an indirect way, it's affecting our universe. But as far as we know, no matter, nothing that's tangible to us interacts with it in any way.
Yeah.
But it does interact in a way that is through one of the forces.
Right.
Gravity.
Yeah. And we still don't know what that is either.
Right.
We can't even figure out what the hell that is.
So it's like some of these forces
and it could be
over.
and it could be multiple forces and could also combine with strange things. Like if the forces themselves affect like large crystal deposits beneath the surface or whatever. Like this is what people think is happening in Marfa, Texas with the Marfa lights. Like there's a flat desert pan out there and they know that there's a lot of large crystalline deposits beneath the surface of this area. And almost every night you can go out there and see these like freaking balls of light floating around, you know. And some people think
only when the moon's gone.
Some people think that that it's piezoelectric, right? That somehow there's stresses on the crystal beneath the surface, and that's causing a piezoelectric effect and resulting in these plasma balls that are electrical in some way. But that doesn't really. I mean, like if that's what's happening, it's still a giant unexplained. Like how. I mean, do people like go off and make floating balls of light with a crystal? I don't think anybody's ever done that. Like Van de Graaff generators can do that, make balls of plasma that seem to move around, but that's not a crystal, it's coiled and everything. So what I'm talking about is if there's it seems to be a convergence of forces that we know about and forces that we don't know about that are coming together and then causing strange interactions with materials that we know about, but don't know that they have these properties when all these forces come together. And that results in something that changes space-time.
Yeah.
Because if you look at these disappearing and appearing stories, and then there's also an entire, like I tie these in with the Mandela Effect, which is where people seem to remember things that are not the way they are now. Like people remember, like certain things being spelled differently all their lives, and then they look at it and it's not spelled that way. And like this is a phenomenon for all over the world. People, and some of the more extreme Mandela effects are like people remembering land masses being different. There's a whole lot of people that remember things like New Zealand being in a different place, or relative to Australia, like a shitload of people. Like they're like, I remember this like, clearly from looking at maps. And of course, a lot of people explain it like, well, memory is fallible, and it's been proven scientifically that.
And then fish fall from the sky.
Right. That's right. That's what you always remind them, bro. Sometimes it rains fish.
Yep.
And cats. And dogs.
And peanuts.
Yeah, peanuts.
And coins.
Like large masses of flesh.
And foreign coins from countries that don't exist.
Yeah.
That have the name of the guy's passport.
Right.
Who showed up.
Clearly you're just underestimating the lengths that Spaniards will go to play a joke on somebody. Yeah. That's
what it was. That guy was flying in a plane that vanished, but he just so happened to be in a position that put him in a different plane. But all of his change fell out of his pocket. And it rained somewhere. People found these coins that were like from a country that doesn't exist. And then meanwhile, that guy got arrested.
So there's the Mandela Effect. And then there's something called, people call it glitch in the matrix or time slips. So there's lots of anecdote. Obviously, this is all anecdotal, but there's tons of these stories. And some of them come from really credible sources where people, for a brief period of time, seem to experience a different time period. Like if you can kind of untangle that, for a brief period of time, they experience a different time period. Okay.
I like that.
And sometimes it's extreme. Like people have seen what appear to be like long extinct animals in like national parks, mammoths, dinosaurs. People have been walking through large areas like, big metropolitan cities, and then they'll look and in this direction, the entire city it's the same city, but it's clearly from several hundred years ago. Right, where they're like looking over there, and there's like horse and buggy, and like people wearing, they're in London. The guy's wearing like a tall top hat and shit like that. But over here, it's like cars, and people have encountered people on the road. Like,
I think that happens in Bandera like every weekend.
But then it disappears. It like goes away. People have encountered.
I could have sworn there was like a couple of guys having like a gunfight on Main Street.
Oh yeah,
when I
I've
was
seen
driving
that
by.
too. See, and like that could happen and be a time slip, and we would never know.
Yeah, that's right.
Because those guys come out and do it every week.
Or do they?
Yeah, we should go mention it in Bandera, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, oh shit. There are ones where people are like driving on a highway, like a long stretch of lonely, empty road or whatever, and they see a car that looks like it's having trouble, and it's kind of a classic. So they pull up alongside and they look, and there's like a woman dressed in period clothes matching the car, and a kid next to her and they look terrified, and they're looking at the car that the people are in that's modern, and they're like terrified or whatever. And the guy like is saying, "Do you need help? Pull over, whatever." And then the car
80 miles per hour, Marty.
yeah, it just disappears. People have found hotels that don't exist, stayed at them. Like they're driving from one place to another that they, and they find this little out of the way, quaint looking hotel, and they stay in there, and they're like, wow, it's really, there's no AC or whatever. And it's kind of like, it's interesting and rustic and old, but they think it's like a gimmick, like that they're doing it on purpose. That everything seems to be from 100, 150 years ago. Right. But then when they're on their way back from wherever they were going, they're like, let's stop at that old cool hotel again. They can't find it. They find the lot where it was. It's totally empty.
I've had this happen to me many times, and it's probably
Getting lost.
I've always told myself that no, this is something different. But
Yeah.
I've always told myself like it's just me sort of not paying attention as well as I thought I was. But like I'll be driving at night
Oh yeah.
on like a lonely road or whatever, and it's like suddenly there's a car like right behind me.
yeah.
But that's one thing. But there'll
Then
be
it's suddenly not there.
Yeah, there'll be a car behind me, and I'm just like, these headlights are just, I'm seeing them like all the time, and then suddenly like I don't see them, and I'm looking, and it's just gone.
Right. And you're on a freeway where they can't just turn right.
Yeah.
Like, they have to get off on an exit ramp, and you kind of.
Yeah, there's been plenty of them where I'm just like, what the fuck happened to that car that was behind me? Did they just turn their headlights off or some shit?
Right. Now they're driving dark. Yeah.
It's weird, but I'm always like, skirp derp myself, like, it's just, I just wasn't.
Well,
paying
there's
attention.
probably a monster out there that just has two really bright eyes
Oh God.
that look exactly like headlights in your rearview mirror. Fuck that. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So anyway, what I'm saying is I tie all these, I don't tie them together, but I see them as being similar. Okay? That people are seeing time slips where they either experience or see something that is clearly not from this era, that is from this in the past. The disappearances that are very strange, the appearances that are very strange. Like all of these things I think are similar in the Mandela Effect, where people seem to remember something that seems like it was from a kind of a slightly different alternate universe, like you were talking about, right? From that show that we were totally not giving, like ruining for people.
Yeah.
Because it's already out, maybe not in other universes. It's not out yet. But I think all these things might be related. They seem to be related to some issue with space-time. That's how I see it. Like that there's something going on that that could be explained with, maybe it could be explained with physics if we knew all the physics. If we really did have the manual for how the universe works, final edition, we probably could explain this.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm thinking about, I was again, listening to this.
Kyle has this thinking face that looks like he's disagreeing with you.
That's why.
So whenever, I'm like
always
saying all this
happens.
shit, and then like he's like looking like whatever I'm saying is bullshit, and I'm like, what's going on? I've had to learn that he's not doing that. He's thinking about something.
I was trying to figure out how to correlate, how to put this other idea into what you're saying, and I was listening to this, John Anthony West talking with Joe Rogan about, and it was like near the end of the podcast. They briefly touched on these two things that I thought was a fascinating way to look at things, and this is apparently, something that John Anthony West has put a lot of thought into, and I've never heard it ever spoken in this way before from anyone. But he was having a conversation with the geologist
Shock.
Robert
Shock.
Enclosure. Shock. And they both agreed on these two things, and one of them had to do with evolution, the other one had to do with creation. These two ideas, and John Anthony West was saying they're both there's this scientific language or not scientific language. These mistakes in the language used. He called it science speak. Okay, which is this sort of degradation of the language that becomes quote unquote science speak, and one of them was evolution through natural selection. And the idea that natural, when you look it up in the dictionary, is something that it's like a process that happens
Automatically or whatever.
automatically, right? Without any. It's like there's no
Guiding force.
right. There's no intelligent thing.
Yeah.
It's implying that there's no intelligence. But then you have this thing called selection.
Yeah.
This word selection, which implies like an intelligent choice. It's like and he used a couple of examples for selection, like
you're selecting apples out of a big pile of them.
right,
Good ones.
or someone gets selected to be the speaker or something like that.
Right.
But
It's making a choice is what
Right.
what it means. Yeah. And like,
the
it implies
path
some kind of free will.
the path of an electron or whatever, or what doesn't select the path that it's going to take or whatever.
Right.
Okay. There's that problem. So natural selection is like this. What the fuck, right? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And then there's intelligent design, and he was
which is redundant because you can't design something without intelligence.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So design is like inherent in the idea of design is this
It's the intelligence. Yeah.
right. So it's like what the anyway. What he was saying is that it seems like there's this what he believes, I guess, is really the thing that interested me more, and I'll try to communicate this correctly, even though I just heard that little bit. But he was basically saying that looking at all of the stuff that the ancient Egyptians built and everything that their culture and everything developed around this idea that, like, yes, it's there is an evolution, but it's like a design too.
Yeah. It's both.
And so it's like our existence is not as mundane as the scientists want to put it in like, oh, it's just all by accident intelligently. You know, it's like sort of this way that they want to like make everything so not mysterious and interesting.
Yeah.
Because their lives don't have meaning and they're trying to, it's like, I don't know, the way he was just saying it was just like, holy shit. But that inherent in the nature of the evolution of the universe is this intelligence, this selection, right? So that everything that happens, it's not just man or the progress of
life,
the progression of life, but it's all of these things. It's the geometry, it's the rule, it's the physics, it's everything was intelligent.
Yeah.
And so it's at the root, at the core of all existence is, I guess, this
implication of intelligence, really.
Yeah, this agency.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about these strange things, this is what I was trying to plug in, right? Like this idea that you were talking about having the manual for the universe final edition, we could figure it out. But it's like whatever this creative force is, like the creativity is at the core. It's not like there was a God sitting around with a big white beard that was like, today I'll decide to create X. It's like all of it is a creative force, and the creative, you can't create without without intention. I guess is the idea.
Yeah, there's I don't remember which religions, maybe it's Hindu, but they talk about the ongoing creation, that God is continuously creating everything. And this is actually
so I have to really work on this. I just heard this today and it kind of was like, what? And I need to go back and listen a little more, and I want to look more into John Anthony West's ideas in that area.
Yeah, I need to get Serpent
really
in the sky.
interesting. Yeah. But
I mean, come on, Serpent.
It's making me think about these strange, just all these random things in a new way that I haven't ever thought about them in that I'm always talking about how, I want to kind of think about the laws of physics and try to figure out how could this take place. And then some things when I'm just totally I have no idea how this could happen. But this idea that John Anthony West was talking about kind of implies that these things will happen. In that it's like you're saying, it's a constant creative force and it's intelligent in a way that it's like, how do we know? When did the creation stop?
Right, it didn't.
It didn't.
Yeah. There was I think this was said to a UFO contactee, but he asked them. Okay, so obviously, again, this is an anecdote, and this guy is saying, I got picked up, they came down. This is an old one, so he's not an abduction. They landed, and they offered him a ride if he wanted to go see the stars, and he got in with them, and he starts asking them questions. Right? They were like, do you have any questions? And one of the things he asked him is about God and creation. And they argued with each other, the different aliens, and they were Nordic, so they're tall, blonde, human-looking ones or whatever. Angels, basically like angels. But they were arguing with each other over God. They did not agree. And one of them said, no, God continuously creates from second to second. He's creating the universe, and if he ever stopped, it would all disappear. It would vanish instantly if he stopped doing it.
That's crazy. That's cool. Yeah, new food for thought for me, for sure.
So you were saying that basically because I was talking about it spawned from me saying that I'm I see all these things as being similar.
And you were talking about if we had the universe, the manual for the universe final edition, maybe we'd see clearly this is, and so that made me think maybe the manual is always changing. Yeah, right? It's not just that we're always wrong about it, but that it's always, there are always new things being created. So as we even though our lifetimes in this whole technologically advanced era that we're in is relatively it's minuscule in terms of the vastness of time.
Yeah, but
even still every second it's creating. So there are new things. Yeah. And we might have just discovered dark matter because it's brand new.
Right. That hasn't showed up yet, but its effects are here.
Starting to happen. Right. And so that was an interesting idea that these, that someone could just randomly appear down the road and just shit, and then have to run back to where they were. And that happens multiple times. It's not that I need this idea to explain it, but it's an interesting thing to think of. If there's a creative force that's still working on and changing and making new things happen, and their effects. I don't know if they're known or not. I guess it doesn't really matter. It's just as new things are created.
I would say that I think time is clearly not as linear as we think. I think deja vu, everybody's experienced deja vu, which is a sensation where you're remembering things as they're happening, but you can't, or at least I've never been able to think to myself, this is about to happen. It just, when it does, I'm I recognize it. And I have a sensation of having seen it before, but I have to see it first. In other words, I can't predict anything in deja vu, right? And usually it doesn't seem
That's
to
what happens to me too, yeah.
It doesn't. I've tried it before. When it's happening, I'm do I know what's about to happen? I don't. But as it's happening, I'm yeah, that's right. This is all right. Yeah. And to me, that's some kind of, there's something weird happening with time right there. Or maybe there's a slight discontinuity with my physical self and my higher self, or whatever, however you'd want to say it, So time seems to be part of all this stuff, like the things that people call time slips or glitches in the Matrix. Now the glitch in the Matrix, obviously, it comes from the idea of deja vu shown in the movie in the Matrix, where it's like something happens again because something is being corrected or changed. The creation is changing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another avenue. We talked about the athletes getting better and better and all that shit. It's like, and this. Okay, so we're only so good, and then someone breaks the record, and then everybody starts breaking the record.
Yeah,
because it's not because it's because the first person breaking the record was the creation of that ability.
That's interesting.
And so then it became capable. It's like
then everybody can do it. Yeah.
They were the first to tap into the new creation, the new creative. So this is what he was talking about with evolution. It's not natural selection. It is an evolution through a creative force.
Yeah.
So it's like we're engaging in it all the time. And this that made me think of like the fact that these ancient people could move all these massive fucking blocks and do all this crazy shit that we're just like, how the fuck can you do that? Was because they were doing the same thing. And remember how we were correlating that? Like with the athletes always breaking the records, and we were talking about...
Yeah, they kept doing the same thing and getting better and better at it. And then they were pushing themselves like, can we move this fucking giant block?
Yeah, so it's like we're all part of this. We're all part of nature. We are natural. And thus we are part of the creative force. And this is why, these great artists that they're tapping into that. And there's like the thing you talked about with the artists that were like, they're borrowing... from that creative force.
Yeah,
and they're making these things, but they're like, well, it's not me doing it. It's like I'm tapping into this.
I'm more like a conduit.
Right. They're a conduit. And so it's like we create new technologies or we create beautiful works of art that it's just like mind blowing, never been done. We create massive, beautiful architectural structures and they get more and more complex, or they start out extremely complex because they had tapped into some creative force that was then lost.
Right. Or the rules were changed.
Yeah.
They could move those giant blocks because the rules were different back then.
But I guess what I was kind of going into is that because we are part of it,
we're changing the rules.
We are changing the rules by our intention and desire.
Yeah.
So now we're changing the rules in a different way. Today,
right?
As we get more into this quantum shit, it's like how do we know that we didn't we're not making this stuff happen, and we're part of it. It's like, I guess what I'm trying to go on here is like, I've bitched about this idea that like the atomic bomb is not natural, man. It's like, well, yeah, it is, because we're fucking natural.
Yeah, I just had a really interesting idea. Like, that UFO sightings happen in waves. They're called flaps, right? So like
butt flaps.
Yeah. Every single time it happens like this, it's very strange. Like, this is one of the things that's been strange about it is like there will be a sighting and then there will be an enormous number of sightings in that area. And people have said, oh, it's because that first sighting's in the news and then everybody's looking and seeing UFOs. That's not true. Like that is so bullshit. Like,
but it might make more people look at the sky more often. So you might have a higher.
Right, but there's so like the flaps are and then they die out. And everybody's still looking at the sky because everybody's been seeing them. So like that kind of it doesn't make sense. Like there's the Belgian wave, and then the one that happened over Washington D.C. and then there's like people say like, well, why don't they land on the White House lawn? Well, they damn near did. Like they sent fucking fighters after them. But I'm thinking like this like. There's clearly something to do with consciousness attached to the UFO phenomena. Like there's something about it that is attached to consciousness and human consciousness. And the idea that we're part of the creation, and then we have these flaps, these waves, right? There's one sighting, just like the guy breaking the record. And then suddenly everybody does it. Like, so one guy sees a UFO and then everybody sees a UFO and they're really there. I'm not saying that it's being made up.
Right.
Right. Like that's really interesting. That concept.
And if there are, multiple layers of reality, that and spiritual stuff like this it's like the more like we had these enlightenment, and
then there's like revival periods too.
The spiritual enlightenment period, which is like everybody starts having these crazy like magical spiritual experiences where they're experiencing God and all of this stuff, and it's like it just spreads like mad.
Yeah. Yeah. And it happens like the phenomena of speaking in tongues also spreads like that. One person will start it and then suddenly it explodes.
Shit. So, okay. So growing up, in the church, the Christian religion, there was this thing that was, what is church, right? There was this conversation in Bible school and all this kind of stuff. And I remember being taught like, well, church is not a building, it's a gathering.
Yeah.
It's a gathering. And there was this
Like magic
this
gathering?
idea that like, my God, I've got a monster and he's kicking your ass. No. Yeah, I never played that game, so I don't really know how it works. Don't get mad, nerds.
Magic the Gathering. It's church.
But yeah, there was this whole thing about like and I think this is something that Jesus said or somebody, whatever, it's in the Bible somewhere.
Whenever two or more.
Yeah, two or more people gather together to whatever, to
Who believe in God, remember me.
Yeah. That's church. So it's like this idea that you're talking about where these things come in waves, and it's like the more people become aware or their consciousness is focused on this idea, it becomes true. And there's the whole thing about faith the size of a mustard seed can move mountains. You must get this, and you need other people. You need to congregate in order to do this.
Yeah.
And we've seen it happen in science too, like when like the creation of the nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
Obviously these dudes were like all badasses and everything, but it's like, hey, we need to do this thing that, it's like, all this shit was theoretical.
Yeah.
And they just all get together and they just do it.
Yeah.
How did they do that?
Art Bell, the original host for Coast to Coast, he like invented the show. He got interested in this concept. And one night he ran an experiment and it terrified him. But his experiment was basically like, okay, because he's got 60 million listeners or whatever, for 4 hours at night. He's like, let's all, like he timed it and everything. He was like, but what we're going to do is we're going to focus on getting rain to somewhere. I can't remember where it was, but somewhere that had a bad drought. He's like, so we're I'll count it down and then we'll spend 1 minute just like thinking about rain for this area. And like there was a fucking flood that night in that area.
That's badass.
Okay.
The rain dance.
Yeah. And so it's again the same thing. Like he had all these millions of people listening to him, and people loved Coast to Coast. They love Art Bell, right? And so he's like, let's try this, audience. And then they did it, and like there was this humongous freaking storm that just like showed up and just like
See, there's something there about this, like the congregation.
Yeah, and that like when we've talked about how people can change, the random number generators if they think about it or whatever. Well, there are universities that are constantly running these random number generators all the time. Well, those during global events that like 9/11, where everybody's paying, like, or the tsunami that took out like all of one of India's coasts or whatever, where everybody's paying attention, like a shitload of people are paying attention to it all over the world. Those random number generators become decidedly less random.
Yeah,
during those periods.
That's fucking crazy, dude.
When global consciousness is forming. And you know what this reminds me of? It's Rupert Sheldrake's what did he call it? The damn it, what is it
Maybe
called?
That's why
the morphic fields, right?
Maybe that's why the aliens conceal themselves all the time. Because if they came down here and they showed, and we all knew that they were there, they're like scared of that power, whatever that might be. Mm-hmm. And it's happened before. In major way, like in the ancient texts, there's like these massive things in the entire.
Yeah. I mean, the Tower of Babel seems to be partly like about that too.
Right.
Like
they were all of one language.
Yeah. Nothing shall be withheld from them. Like they can do anything if they're fucking like this.
So there's this other thing in the Christian tradition that one of the things that Jesus spoke about was that it was kind of couched in terms of gifts from God, that there are more gifts than you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is ask. And if you
ask,
believe,
you shall receive. Yeah.
Yeah, you've already received it.
Right. You already have it.
You already have it.
Are you preaching?
No, it's just it's like that idea of like all these people focusing on rain in this area. It's like they're sort of like asking
Yeah.
and then it's already happening, and there's like
Yeah.
boom, it's like,
Yeah.
you know.
And it was a flood. Fuck.
But if it's just like this idea of prayer and all these different religions, meditation, and all this kind of shit is like, you know, this, you know, the communication with Godhead or whatever.
I see. Yeah. I was thinking of it as like, because we're not really, as individuals, we're not that great at focusing on something for, like, we're totally focusing on one thing for long periods of time. But if you have a million people doing it, there's a big effect. So all the meditation and prayer is kind of like, it looks to me like people trying to get good at getting an effect like that where you can do it yourself, right? You don't need millions of people. Like, if millions of people kind of sort of not very well focusing on something for a little bit can do something badass, then maybe one guy who can really fucking focus, you know,
Yeah.
can get similar effects just by himself. Like, you got to get really good at it. You know, like the guy that put his consciousness in the path of the laser and fucking
Yeah,
dimmed
exactly. It's just interesting how this little idea that John Anthony West was talking about, you know, struck me as like, wow, that's really cool the way he thought about it. And
Yeah.
then
I wanna hear
like-
it now.
Like thinking just in all
I've
these
listened to that
terms of
show.
like all these mysteries and all of the shit that we're talking about, plugging that simple little idea in sort of, it's just one of those things. It's sort of like you can find all these correlations in the ancient wisdom, you
Yeah.
know, the ancient texts and things that sort of point to that or sort of corroborate that idea.
Yeah. And the natural selection thing too, I like the survival of the fittest. That's like, I was thinking about this when you were saying how he was talking about that this is a scientific term that's wrong or whatever. Like, it's, you know,
Science speak,
yeah,
whatever.
It's really not survival of the fittest. If it is anything, it's non-survival of the non-fit, not survival of the fittest. You don't have to be the fastest. You just have to be not the slowest.
Yeah. I wish I could remember exactly how he put it, but he was talking about the sort of the quackademics, right? The modern scientific movement is so materialistic.
Yeah.
And it's like he was just really laying it on these guys, like just trashing them.
Yeah.
Saying that their lives are so meaningless.
Yeah, they want to project that onto everybody.
Because they are not creative. They're not the creative type. They don't have that ability to tap into that creative. They're just, and their lives are so meaningless and dry and devoid of you know, I guess that creative force that they want to shape, you know, the ideas of the universe to fit their life or their world. That's pretty hardcore freaking criticism.
Well, I mean, like that, you know, like Robert Heinlein said, most quote unquote scientists are bean counters or button sorters. Like, they're not creative; they're catalogers. You know, and I can't remember who said this, but it was somebody talking about archaeology. They were saying that the kind of person you want to send out in the field who's going to pick up every little potsherd is not necessarily the guy you want to tell the story of that civilization.
I'd be interested. Anybody that listens to this podcast and you're hearing this, go listen to that episode with John Anthony West. It's and Joe Rogan. I'd be interested. It's freaking send us an email.
Yeah, I'll have to
I want to
listen
know
to
what
it
you
again.
guys think of that, because it's kind of like I'm gonna have to keep that idea plugged in for a while before it.
Yeah, it percolates through.
Yeah.
I've got one more thing to say to you metric people. I was thinking about this.
Fucking tenors.
The meter used to be based on the circumference of the Earth across the poles. So you would go from pole to pole. It's the polar circumference, right? It was the polar circumference of the Earth divided by some enormous number. I can't remember what it was. That used to give us the meter. Well, at some point in the more recent past, they decided to base the meter on the distance that light went in a certain amount of time. But of course, the speed of light changes. So that's going to be fun in the future for you metric people.
Yep.
Because the length of a meter is based on something that is not constant.
Yeah.
So yeah, we should all change to metric, and then we won't, like, you know, 100 years from now, everything's going to be fucking wrong. That would be fun.
The John Anthony West episode is JRE226.
Yeah.
Number 226.
And I've listened to that. I don't remember what you're talking about, so I have to go back and
It's
listen
like
to it
pretty
again.
near the end. It's
That was a
badass.
great episode.
It was really
the one where he
great.
was
He's-
laughing because he can hear the dog barking
Yeah.
and all that shit. He's like,
It's
that's
so
great. I
great.
love it. And John Anthony West is, there's a fan going in the background or something like
Yeah.
that.
And he goes, can we take a break? I need to go get some more vodka out of the fridge.
That's right.
He takes off to get vodka.
That's right.
And Joe Rogan's like, this guy's fucking awesome.
That was a classic.
Well, that's it, folks.
Yeah, that's it.
Great show. Loved every minute of it.
Yep.
Hope you guys did.
And if you listen to that or for any other reason, you can email us at brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. You can go to the blog and comment there.
Yeah, comment. Go listen to that episode and comment.
Yeah.
I want to know
Go
what
to
y'all think about that.
brothersoftheserpent.blogspot.com. Thanks to Kyle. Thanks to Ty. Thanks to AWACS Productions. Aetherium Studios.
Thanks to Laura for
Thanks
the
to Laura
intro.
for the intro again. New intro. Woo!
Intros are bad.
That's right. You can go to iTunes to give us some props, some 5 stars.
Really, what you should do is just like jack your buddy's phone and just
Make him
like,
subscribe.
subscribe to our podcast.
Download Beyond Pod and subscribe him.
Oh man, I'm a total asshole. I meant to
Oh, yeah.
thank Trial by Error Variety Show podcast, which is one of our buddies here locally has a podcast, and it's all about bands. You know, each episode is a different band, local bands, all kinds of bands, and he interviews people. And he invited me over there for an interview about $50 Dynasty, my band.
Which episode was it? Do you know?
It hasn't been published yet. I think he's
Okay.
going to do it in April after Metal March.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So metal.
Metal March.
But yeah, if y'all are interested, check it out.
What is it called again? Trial by Error?
Trial by Error Variety Show.
Nice. Cool.
So it was kind of funny that like after the interview, he had me do a host of another show. So he has a band member come on and talk about their band.
Yeah.
And then after that's over, he's already got he's got multiple bookings ahead of time, and he's like publishing shows that he's already done in the past. And so like what he had me do was like a couple of lines he'd written about like introducing this other band.
Oh, cool.
And their interview. It's like, hey, I'm Kyle from $50 Dynasty and Snake Bros. So yeah, he asked me a lot about the Brothers of the Serpent podcast. He's listened to that. And so I was like trying to talk about music.
He listens to it.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know. What's up, bro?
Yeah. I was trying to talk about like the band and the music in terms of like some of the shit that, that we've talked about here about ancient traditions and ancient
Esoterica.
wisdom and esoteric and trying to like put that into the music and like make great art for the future,
Yeah.
And it's like at one point I was like, he's like, he's not trying to say that he's Da Vinci. Okay, folks, I know this guy. He's not just like a stuck-up asshole. I was like, oh shit, no, I'm not. This would be really cool if I could do that, but not saying that I've done that at all.
And you won't know because you're going to be dead.
That's right. I'm just doing my best so that maybe it's great. But
Yeah.
Anyway.
Otherwise, awesome fossil face.
yeah, so thanks to Chaz for that. That was fun. And anyway,
Yeah, that's really cool.
so
One more time with the name?
Trial by Error Variety Show.
Cool.
And at the end, it's like he has a specific way of saying it. Follow the golden rule. And he puts this echo thing on it, right?
Oh, nice.
So I had to do that as the host of one of the other shows.
Badass. All right, that's it for this week, and keep coming back. We got a lot of great subjects. I've been doing all kinds of research that I have not yet been able to get to in the shows because we keep going on tangents, which is great.
Yeah. But we're gonna have Joe Rogan on our podcast.
And I'm gonna try to get Randall Carlson, and I've contacted some other people for some interviews that should be interesting if they contact me back. But yeah, so keep coming back, guys. We got a lot of interesting shit to talk about. So that's it for this week. Good
Thanks,
night.
Snakes.
That's right. Good night, Adamu.
I won.
Give me some gold.